All right, and here we go. Welcome to episode number 26 of You Had Me at Halo, where we talk about one of gaming's most storied franchises. And we have a lot of news to discuss since we last met 3 weeks ago, including the Halo release date, no co-op in Forge at launch. We have a lot of Halo narratives out there. We want to talk about the perception versus reality of some of those. And then we also have some other Gamescom announcements, and obviously we got things from our community as well. But before we get into it, let's first meet today's Spartan team. Joining me today, first up, is Spartan Mike, aka Mr. Kage Maru. How's it going, Mike?
Hey friends, I'm good. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Next up, we got Jesse, Spartan Jesse, aka Mr. Don Cabeza. How's it going, Jesse?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm awesome. Next up, Spartan Ursel, aka Mr. Soul Blazer. What's up?
Nothing much. I apologize in advance for the hair. I'm in that kind of phase where you're growing it out, like that middle phase. So, yeah.
All too well.
I feel like that would have been the major question. Somebody would have super chatted that for sure. So next up, Spartan Daniel, aka Mr. Nadian. How's it going, Daniel?
Pretty good, guys. It's just good to see you guys again for the first time in a while. So stoked about that. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, it has been a long time, and finally, as your host today, it's Abe Spartan, One Bad Mother. So I do want to start off with just a note before we get into some of the topics. So we've seen a lot of intense dialogue over Halo the past few days, and we do get it. People are passionate, and this is a reminder from the You Had Me at Halo team to put people first. Even over things we like a lot. And that means our friends that we play with, that means the people that we don't know, who turn to experiences like Halo to escape, to get away from what's out there these days. A lot of people turn to things like this to deal with mental health. This also is for our future friends. I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of you watching this, if you've been playing for a long time, you probably, made friends that you've stayed in touch with for a very long time. And then also, I don't want to leave this out, but this also means the developers. We've heard here, this team has heard from people that from indirect sources that we know that the developers over at 343 care about this game being great a lot, probably more than most of us. No matter how much passionate you think you are about it, this is what they literally think about most of their days. And yes, paying customers are entitled to feedback. 343 themselves ask for constructive, critical feedback. It doesn't entitle public name calling or demeaning people. So we just want to put that out there. And oftentimes in our community, probably in things that go beyond gaming communities, everything does become a debate. Gamers start to act like political pundits, and our goal is to try to win the discussion, and every statement belongs to a side. So I'd like to disclaimer this show to say that all genuine discussion is welcome. Not every viewpoint needs to belong to a team of either corporate bootlickers or team troll. You can have some sort of discussion in between that. And usually questions that lead to discussions lead to learning and understanding. Debates often don't. So let's try discussing as gamers while still respecting people. Shall we?
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, until Mike has a bad opinion, then we can shut him down.
It's inevitable.
Does anybody have anything they want to add to that? I know I just kind of rambled on a little while.
Yeah, don't harass developers.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Don't harass developers.
As frustrating as this might be for anybody, it's probably much, much, much more frustrating for them.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
these are the people that dedicated almost 6 years of their lives, but at this point,
Yeah, and it's important to remember too that developers are people, and they've been going through a lot of the same challenges that we have in the past 18 months because of COVID, and not to mention the pressure of a emulate. Thanks, Jesse.
You were giving it. You
Thanks
were
for-
leading your flock.
Thanks for taking this
Giving
moment
us words of
seriously,
wisdom.
You're making me the preach gif in human form, right?
Hmm.
Oh man. All right. Well said. And so with that, we are going to get into some discussions here. And again, we may have some different thoughts on some of these topics, but I think we can do it like we said, respectfully. So let's go ahead and start off with topic number one, and we're gonna start with something a little bit. What?
I forgot to record. Sorry, Soul. I'll send you the download.
Oh, it's okay. I'll download it off YouTube. It's okay.
I was so focused on making sure Abe actually understood when the podcast was starting that I didn't even think to press a button.
You had 3 jobs.
Yeah.
Seriously.
You failed at least one of them. Oh man.
Yeah.
All right, but let's go ahead and start off, I think, with the easy topic, and that's going to be the release date that we just learned about yesterday, which it's coming out December 8th for anybody who's been living under a rock that's a Halo fan, and I think we've all lost that prediction. Did anybody call December 8th earlier?
The
in
month
year?
of December seemed more and more likely when everything was, because Forza was early. We heard that no, they actually aren't worried about Call of Duty. They don't care about it.
Yeah.
It's just more in the initial friggin' E3 showcase in June, they had Halo in December. It was there. They had it listed 6 games in 6 months, and Halo was listed in December. I don't think they were really hiding it too much. It was always going to be the end of the year. I just kept as Team September out of a vain hope that I knew had no actual chance of happening.
So what's your thoughts about it? Is it, now that you know it's December 8th, does it make you feel any certain way? Good, bad?
I mean, they're taking
Questions.
all the time they can, essentially, saying we are now fully for almost 3 months just in bug squashing, polishing mode. And if Psychonauts 2 is anything to go by, Phil's recommitment to trying to launch well and relatively bug-free in comparison to some of the launches they've had recently, I hope they really use that time well, because they've lowered their focus. They're laser focused on campaign and multiplayer, and then they've got a roadmap for a full year after that. So I'm very interested to see how they do.
Good thoughts. What about you, Mike? What's some of the thoughts that you had when?
Oh boy. No.
That's why we have you here, so we can have a little bit of, so we don't all just agree and go home in 10 minutes.
Like I'm not gonna like escalate it to say that I'm concerned. Here's my main thought is that, like, I hope the developers aren't crunching. That's my hope. Like I just hope they're not crunching, because this release date seems like it's what they determine the furthest they can push it back in the year. And I mean, I would think that their original hope or dream was to launch it along the console. I mean, all of that, like, it just seems
Probably.
it seems weird that you're going to have your game, you're going to have your console or your controller, your console, and your console that comes with the copy of the game, and then you'll have to wait 3 weeks for the game. So I'm not going to say that this gives me a pause or reasons to think that the game is coming in hot, but at the very least, there's a chance that it's coming. It's going to be a close. It's coming in close or tight.
It's definitely coming in close. I feel
And
like,
well, here's my concern though. Like, and just like I said on Twitter, and just like my mantra is, like, whatever's best for the developers. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about yes, marketing deals are going to play a part. Like their commitment to gamers and all that. Like, I understand the logistics and the different aspects that come into play when you're picking a release date. But at the end of the day, what I care most about is the developers. And my main concern is, if this thing, or if they're cutting it close, I really hope they hit the mark, because I don't want them like working over the holidays because there's any major bugs that are found or anything like that. That's my only, not concern, but thing that, that has to be, I think should be considered. But they're being positive, they're being excited on Twitter. I've seen 343 developers, and you can spin that by saying that you got to put on a positive face. Like, I've been part of projects where in the back end, we know that it's not doing well, but we have to put on like a very positive front.
You got the Joker in the back behind the door, like burning stuff and leaves out front, like smiling at everybody. Yeah. We've all been there.
And so, like I'm excited for it. I'm glad that we got a release date. I just hope that I hope everything's going well, on the back end where we can't see.
Yeah. No, I think those are really fair, and just and a lot of what you're saying, Mike, is too. It's fair, common sense questions to ask about that, especially for anybody when you start to kind of like put some of the opportunities together with where they're at. But let's turn it over to Daniel and see, like, what kind of thoughts do you have about the the date that you had there, in regards to both some of the things that Mike talked about, and just in general, like, how does it maybe impact you, or is there any sort of
I've got a few things that I'm glad I went after Mike, because for one, like, it's a couple things, right? You used to want to get your games in before Black Friday, right? Because that was the biggest sales holiday of the year. But Game Pass, A, changes that paradigm. B, COVID is ramping up, unfortunately, again. So I foresee a lot of stores closing again, especially where I'm at. I'm in, unfortunately, a place where people don't take it seriously. And so it had this been quote unquote normal times, I would have been like, I don't know if that's the right move. But then again, you remember that it's free to play, that already changes the paradigm. But I think when we talk about developers crunch and things like that, I follow a fair amount of engineers over at 343, and quite a few of them have been interacting with me lately. And I think the gist that I've gotten was that this move was to essentially guarantee there was as little crunch as possible. Same thing with, and we'll talk about it when we talk about the co-op delay and Forge, but those were all moves, including this, to minimize and mitigate crunch as much as possible. I think they're setting themselves up for success on that end. I'm also, Nick has talked about the marketing deals and whatnot that they have with EA time and time again. And I also wonder if some of this is kind of an added benefit of ensuring that EA has a little bit more time to get that Battlefield crowd in first, so that you're not immediately competing. Because, typically when we have a Battlefield, a Call of Duty, and a Halo, there's always something that loses out in that. Look at Titanfall 2. An infinitely superior game to what came out in the competition, but because it came out between the two heavy hitters, it got lost in the mix. And so I think this is potentially a good thing if we're talking about the health of the Halo community. They get a little bit more time to make the game as bug free as possible, and they also get that distance between games. God, Jesse. Yes.
I'm sorry, I was reacting to chat.
He's trying to take their eyes off your hair. So let's go to you. I think those are some good points, Daniel, and I think it's also kind of enlightening some of the things you brought up with your or keeping track of them. And I agree with both of you and Mike. I think we'll talk. I think as we get into this program a little bit deeper and we start talking about what Halo Infinite is, and some of the things that will be happening to this game over the long term, like really what this platform's about. You do have to pace yourself, honestly, and I think that's something that a lot of people haven't really brought up. Obviously,
goddamn Techno Viking.
Obviously, yeah, in an ideal world, that December's probably not the ideal time, and it is clear that it's not like they have time to kill. It's not like they have time to waste. So I think that's probably one of the takeaways you could have from that. But so I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty brief. I feel like we all know the delays. We championed a while.
His audio's breaking up for me.
You guys hear me?
Nope, kind of
breaking up,
man.
Oh, weird. I'm sorry. I kicked a wire. I'm good now.
Your cat's a tune on the wire.
Hey, sorry about that. What I'm saying is, when it comes to delays, a lot of times we're like, yes, the game got delayed. It means the developers have more time to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But what it also means is that what's it called? A feature creep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, hey, a couple months, let's add this feature we had in the cutting board before into the game. But knowing that Infinite was presumably internally delayed to December, but also removed features that would have probably been aimed to make launch, makes me think that they are a little more serious in trying to minimize or reduce crunch. There will be crunch at the end. There kind of always is. It's a deadline-based project. You're going to be working longer hours before the project comes out. You know what I mean? For me, my bigger concern is hopefully they're not like working longer hours now, 4 months before
long-term crunch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The year-long crunch that some other most other projects.
I get the impression they are crunching right now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing: like, there's degrees of crunch, and like with Daniel talking about them minimizing the amount of crunch, that doesn't mean they're not crunching.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever I say I think there might be crunching now, I'm not saying that they're working 14-hour days, but I mean
maybe 50-hour weeks, that kind of thing. Right.
It's not.
I work 50-hour weeks and I don't work on games, so like it's probably longer than that. But but there's crunch and then there's crunch.
Yeah.
Like the crunch that was described for something like Halo 2 was. I've heard Bungie developers say they never want to do that ever again in their life. I don't.
Almost inhumane, right? Like
I don't think, and definitely hope that 343 is in that state. It doesn't seem like it is. If they're in that state, they probably.
Yeah, I mean, even remember when there was the quote unquote report about the singular developer talking about the crunch at the team when he actually came out with his update. He was like, no, the team's not crunching at all. It's just a change of how I work because of working from home and having kids and having to
that's definitely a big
take care of them. Like, but he reiterated that that basically the team doesn't crunch. So at least at that time.
He also said that like there are times that you just get on a roll.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen.
Yep.
You get on a roll, you get closer, you hit, some kind of, I don't know, landmark or milestone, I should say. And, but yeah, I mean, he was pretty adamant that it wasn't like a wide thing.
like a severe thing. Yeah. In terms of the date itself, yes.
Thank you.
In terms of the date itself, it's a good date, I feel. I think we'll look back at it and figure out, I mean, hoping, actually, it's a better option, that the game is in bug-ridden at launch, right? December 8th gives the team around 2 weeks or so to focus on any major bugs, knock them out of the park, and then take what's hopefully a nice, long 2-week break or so before starting full feature on season 2 content, in January. You know what I mean? So in that aspect, it feels like a pretty reasonable date. December 8th feels like probably the latest it could go in December while still giving that buffer room for the team, the allowance, I should say. Of course, I'd like to play the game earlier. I mean, who wouldn't? And technically, it also means now that co-op is coming later too, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of February, like I was thinking it's going to come, March now, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Potentially, yeah.
I hope Phil gives them a month. Forget 2 weeks. Give them a month, Phil.
Yeah.
Right? Give them some rest.
It is America, though, so 2 weeks is already a fair bit.
God, it's so sad that you say that, but it's true.
Here in America, everything's counted in dollars.
We don't allow workers vacations.
Get a week. It's like well. Yeah, that's it. No, I agree with you guys on the crunch thing. And at the end of the day, is it ideal? I don't think so. From a consumer standpoint, maybe it's not that not that big of a deal. I mean, it would have been nice to play at Thanksgiving, but I guess that means that you get to spend more time with your family because who's going to skip them for Call of Duty? But you know, like it'll be interesting to see a big game launch in December. One of the things that kind of came to mind is like, I know Cyberpunk launched last year, but that didn't really have legs. So I don't know how much you can take away from it.
The worst game to bring up in this conversation.
Bring up Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Yeah, Super Smash Brothers Ultimate was the other. So yeah, games can come out. They can obviously do really well. And I think, you know, we know nowadays that time of year is not as big a deal. This digital age, this COVID age. I think Dan, you brought up some really good points about that as well. You know, especially over here in the U.S. down south, I'm sure there's gonna be lots of extra Halo people staying home.
And yeah, about Black Friday, he's right. There's no consoles to sell. There's no games to sell. I mean, it's coming to Game Pass.
Yeah. And Daniel's 100% right that Game Pass changes that dynamic.
Yeah.
And because you're, you know, the whole thing with Black Friday is you're trying to push unit sales or copy sales, where their main focus is subscriptions.
Yeah.
You're going to push that all, you know, 24/7.
And one thing I feel like people aren't really talking about is I'm pretty sure December 8th is too late to be considered for Jeff's Game Awards.
Full month
right?
too late, yeah.
A full month too late.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah. People are still talking about how it might be competing for Game of the Year. Nah, it's not even going to be eligible. Like, we're good there.
If you turn 8 sideways, it makes an infinity symbol. So it makes...
And it is the 342nd day of the year, so it almost made it.
Yeah.
The thing with Halo though is it's going to be successful no matter what time it launches. It could be March, it could be December, it could be June, and it would do well. And that's the only, I guess, I don't want to say frustration, but that's, you know.
What did you do, man?
You know, that it can launch anytime. So I hope the developers are getting the time that they need.
Yeah. I'm hoping, I mean, this year was interesting. I'm hoping that it shows Microsoft that you can and should release games throughout the year rather than within 3 months, you know.
That was the other direction I wanted to kind of take that in. Like, just looking at it from our standpoint, that would be a nice trend, that it's not just because a handful of AAA games needed that extra time, but maybe they find out it is a good window in general, because you think about it, especially with a platform game like this that's going to rely so much on Twitch and things like that. If you're launching it at the exact too close to Call of Duty and Battlefield, it's not about being afraid of those games. It's about the fact that you can end up diluting a lot of the attention, right? So, you know, kind of launching it a few weeks away from there, almost a month away from, you know, those games, it does give them a chance to sort of, like, that energy, that initial energy will kind of cool down. They'll have the stage to themselves in December, a good chance for, you know, and then people will jump on it, and maybe that's the one that sticks. I think sometimes you know, it's one of those things where sometimes it's best to go last. It's something Sony's figured out, you know, with E3s. But, you know, sometimes it is the best thing to go last and kind of and be the last thing people are talking about. So, and especially for a game like this, that's going to be ongoing. But in terms of like what Mike was saying, I do think that it's okay to question that and say, they need it all the time, because why else would they have intentionally gotten that date? November 15th makes a ton of sense. But obviously, this is something they've known they're going to plan for. It's not like this just came up overnight, because they put Forza in there. That was already there. So obviously, when they put Forza in November, they knew at that time Halo was probably not going to be in that slot. So, this makes sense. And regardless of where it is, a little bit more polish is better, and more than anything, I do agree that's a reputation they got to shake. More than not having features. Features, I think you can make up for it. It's launching a game that's buggy or, you know, doesn't work and things like that. That's the stuff that's the stuff that people will really remember more than anything.
It's the first impressions thing.
Unless it's a Bethesda.
Expected. No, it's right, a feature.
Well, that's a feature, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the game is polished and solid at launch, then then all of the, everything would
concern.
be for nothing.
Pretty much everything I say banks on me assuming the game is going to be fairly polished at launch.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else that we want to say about the release date?
Any other major games coming out in December, by the way?
Dying Light 2.
Dying Light. It's actually.
Oh,
I
the same
do not
day,
believe
isn't
that
it?
game is
Yeah,
coming out
they're-
December.
they're
That's the
gonna be very
same
sad.
day.
I think so.
There's
They
no
might
way
wanna-
it's releasing on that
It's
day.
the
Let me
one
double
day
check.
before, maybe, because of Tuesday.
And Microsoft has a marketing deal. How did they not get that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Day
Like,
before
don't they have a
Sony
marketing
says.
deal with Dying Light
Maybe
2?
it was a slap for the writer that shall not be named.
Yeah, Dying Light 2 is the day before, so they're going to be very
December
sad.
7th. Yeah.
That's changing. There's no way that game releases.
That's not staying.
I'm
I
still.
mean-
I don't believe the game even releases yet, so I'm gonna wait.
My guess is Microsoft didn't give them the date because they didn't want to give anybody the date.
Yeah,
And it's still leaked.
it's still leaked. Yeah, the night before.
Yeah,
Well, that was
0
'cause of the
days.
store, but
It's,
yeah.
not- it's been now officially 1 day since the leak. So yeah, they're starting a new streak. All right, so let's go ahead and move over to the topic. I think the big topic of the day, and this is we didn't have our show last week. I was on the road at the time that the news broke. It was a Friday afternoon, kind of sandwiched in some Halo news. And it wasn't something they tried to highlight, obviously, but it is probably the biggest news we've had in a while, and that's the fact that Co-op and Forge are not going to be at launch. First thing I think we do need to mention is, to the communities, we understand that this is something that is important to a lot of people, and I have friends that I play with that were really bummed. Some of them about the co-op and some about the Forge. It's an interesting thing that hasn't got a lot of traction lately. But I have a group of people that we played custom games, like picked a night a week for a few years that we played after Halo 5. So yeah, this is definitely something that matters to the community. Do have empathy for people who are looking forward to it, but I do want to turn it over to you guys, though, and just kind of get your overall thoughts in terms of, what you think this means. Does this impact it? And I mean, even taking it a step further, what do you think about the community out there? Is this something that people will, for those that start every time with co-op, do we expect that they'll just adjust, or that, is this really going to hamper that experience? So I'll go ahead and I'll start with Mike, because I think, Mike, you might have had the spiciest take to begin with, and I just feel like waking everybody up.
I like that double take.
Here's the, I do think I do think there is lacking of empathy for the people that play co-op at launch, because that is, and I think the co-op aspect is making is a bigger topic or point of conversation than Forge, because co-op has been a thing since, in launch since the beginning, since CE, and that's really the thing. We didn't have Forge until until part 3, and then Forge was delayed with Halo 5, so this
isn't part of ODST. It's
yeah. I think co-op being a more of a focus kind of makes sense. I think it sucks. Like, I'm a big co-op fan. Like, I love co-op more than I do competitive multiplayer. I only play competitive multiplayer basically when I play with you guys and in Halo.
We can tell.
And well, and it hey, I did pretty well.
To be fair, we don't play often. All right.
To be fair,
He doesn't get much practice.
But co-op, I had Halo 3. We had a co-op. I went to a launch party and we played the campaign through co-op. And I think, as the key thing with playing a co-op game at launch is finding the right people that aren't going to ruin the story, aren't going to, and I know people that regularly play Halo at launch since Halo 3, like co-op. And I do empathize and I do understand that. But then on the flip side of that coin, people saying that it should be delayed just because of co-op, I don't agree with. Like if it came down to, like the supposed report about 343 wanting more time, if the developers wanted more time, then delay it. But if we're talking strictly co-op, I don't think that's worth a delay alone. It does, like, as a co-op fan, I do feel for the people that play co-op, and it does suck for them because right now all of us have to wait. Like, we have to try not to get spoiled because of the campaign being out there. Those people now have to wait potentially 3 months or more in that same boat, and even worse because it's one thing, like, all the Halo fans, I imagine a bulk of the Halo fans are now avoiding spoilers, but then come launch, it's kind of open season. And so it's going to be even worse to avoid spoilers. Like, there is the spoiler aspect that I do feel for them. It sucks, but here's the thing. Like, I do appreciate the transparency. I do appreciate 343 being honest about it. And again, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, that news was probably more frustrating and more heart-wrenching for them than it was for any of us hearing it.
Agreed.
So, the fact that they were willing to be that honest and upfront, I have mad props and respect for them. They've been transparent this entire year, like all the way since December when they started the blog, the monthly blog. I can't give them enough credit about how upfront and honest and forthcoming they've been. So, like, everyone wants transparency, and I can't repeat it enough. Don't attack the developers. Like, it's not like I'm disappointed. Like, but my disappointment more so generates concern for the developers and not for myself as a co-op fan. So, like, express your disappointment. Like, I expressed my disappointment. I was disappointed, but
yeah, he let us know pretty loud and clear.
I
think all of us were like, there was a lot of WTFs going on at first, but there's actually a good question. I do want to read this out because I think this is something we might be able to add some light to this. He said, what just happened? Said, hey, I'm not a dev, so I have no clue, but wouldn't it be easier to make co-op than a multiplayer? And so I think that's the first thing that came to our mind. Is like, co-op, that's like easy. That's like the easy thing. But if anybody's ever worked in any sort of technology, I haven't done development, but I can kind of relate to it in some regards. Is that you have a kind of a prioritization order of things. It's not that, because these things don't always get developed in kind of like they might get developed side by side a little bit, but really a lot of times what happens is some aspect in that entire pipeline needs to wait until something else is done. And there is a good chance, we can only speculate right now, so I don't really want to go off of any rumors or Reddit posts or anything like that. I mean, we can only speculate of what it is. Obviously it's technical, right? So there's some technical thing that's held it up. And I think the other thing that kind of becomes clear, and not a lot of people have been talking about this, but what it really emphasizes is the prioritization they put on the solo part of this. So when Staten came in here, there's a chance that that maybe they restructured some of the ways the campaign was, because remember that it was something that was finished except not technically, so they might have reorganized things. And at the end of the day, it does feel like, at least to me, and I'm using the best without the information, without any sort of using any sort of leaks or anything like that, using my best intuition on this, it does feel like they've really prioritized this being a much better solo campaign, because one of the biggest criticisms of Halo 5 was that it didn't really play that well if you weren't with your buddies, because it was really balanced to have people playing with you. It was like the opposite. It was prioritized to be a co-op game.
Because the AI was worse than Mike.
Yeah, it was. It made me want to play with Mike.
Love you, Mike.
Danny, why don't you add to that? Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my biggest the biggest thing I kind of had a rant on, and I thought it would be a little bit more uh like we'd have a little bit more disagreements, but it seems
Right.
like we're all kind of on the same page. And for my part, I was equally as rambunctious last week, so apologies for that, definitely.
It was
It was
fun
a
to
But
hectic
watch.
day, man.
yeah, but the thing is, like, the first episode I was on with you guys, that we talked about how Halo impacted our lives, and like the memory that you think of most, right? And
Yeah.
and mine was playing co-op with my little brother and my big brother. I can't do that
Yeah.
anymore because my little
Yeah.
brother's gone. So it's like I can empathize and I can see the other side, because few people appreciate that aspect of playing a Halo game when you first get it with your brothers than I do. Um, but at the same time, some of the vitriol that we saw and some of the we should delay the game, like Mike said. I mean, it's like it, it's not a lack of empathy to say that we shouldn't force a game to be delayed so that you can get your one feature and millions of other people have to wait, right? I mean, it's selfish, but
Yeah.
I can empathize and I can sympathize with those people, definitely. But I think that there's a holistic approach to this, right? If you look at the marketing deals, like Mike mentioned earlier, like you have some of those things kind of set in stone, and at a certain point you can no longer delay. And also, if we champion developer health, then as a live service game, which this is, it's important to remember that new features and new elements will be added over time. That is
Yeah.
that is the crux of a live feature game. And so if reducing crunch and making the developers' lives easier means releasing campaign solo and multiplayer now and then releasing those other features later, I'm all for it. I mean, it's definitely disappointing, but I also think that people comparing this to previous Halo launches where there weren't, while kind of revising history and not remembering how many things were cut in Bungie Halos,
Yeah.
and also comparing it to a time where people can say whatever they want, but as somebody who does script and develop platforms remotely right now, my work is drastically hindered in some elements. I'm not saying that with that we can't be productive or we're not getting things done, but you know, communication is a lot harder. Uh, build iterations take so much longer to do remotely when I'm having to jump through a jump server and then on something else through a VPN. I mean, I'm cutting my network speed in half, and rural Washington, where some of these people live, do not they have worse internet than I do. So it's all those things that we have to keep in mind. And so it's when so many games, like we just saw Horizon Forbidden West get delayed, and that's not a knock on those guys at all, but it's you see so many games get delayed. I think having if this means we get a solid campaign solo and multiplayer package at launch, I think that's the best reality, than delaying it or forcing them to release a co-op that's broken, because we all know that the narrative around Xbox would be, oh, they can't release despite the fact that they've released 6 games this year or whatever it is that weren't broken.
Yeah.
If they released Halo broken, the narrative would become Xbox doesn't release solid quality games at launch, and everything else that comes into that. So I mean, that's the things that Phil and those guys and Bonnie have to think about too, is the narrative of how people are going to perceive and propagate misinformation narratives, whatever you want to call it. So that's my rant.
And Daniel, to your point, I think there's you're speaking about narratives, and I think that I know, like, we've heard we've seen the Twitter, so we know what all the feedback is, and we're going to kind of address some of that stuff and acknowledge some of it, and also add some more light, I think, to some of those comments. But before we do that, I wanted to get, Sol and Jesse, so I know you are like the co-op dude, right? Like that is really how you play it as well.
It used to be. right?
Okay.
Like I think for a lot of people here, same thing with Dan. I grew up playing Halo co-op with my brothers, right? I think Halo 2 came out. Obviously, I didn't even play it solo. In fact, I think back then I wouldn't even think of playing this game solo. I'm like, that's kind of weird. But then as the years progressed, I think the last game I played co-op was Reach, in 2010. Since then, my brothers have moved out. I myself have gone to school. My younger siblings didn't play as much. I started playing the game solo. So I feel like this isn't a unique case, and I feel like that's definitely not the case for current youth growing up. You know what I mean? Split screen is for them is like a what is this? I can't use the entire screen.
I
What the
can
heck is
have my
going on?
own screen.
Yeah.
This is how Soul looks when he's playing solo. Oh, yeah. Damn. Looking good, man.
I honestly, I'm with Dan here. I kind of thought we'd have a little bit more friction, but I feel like we're all basically on the same page again.
So boring.
Yeah,
I
when
think
we got over
It's not boring.
It's when we got
Just kidding.
over the, and I talked to like Miles Dampierre on Twitter and stuff about it. And it's like that first hit of emotion and disappointment is like everyone got that, but then after that disappointment, you sort of start to understand why. Yeah. Then it's like when I'm saying I got yelled at quite a bit for calling people emotionally responding to it.
Yeah, so did
but I really stand by that fact that you were very upset. Like everyone was very upset, and your opinion on how I just love playing this co-op, and it's so tied into my memories of the game. Yeah, and because I can't do that, I'm just gonna be really, really angry over it for a day, and just let me be angry. I'm like, okay, but just like give it a week. And then say, oh, yeah,
I'm happy we waited a week.
Yeah, see, the truth of it is, if you waited, once you look at it and you're like, okay, delaying, and I'm talking more, Mike, about the people that are delay the whole thing. Yeah. They were delay it all for co-op, and there were so many of them on Twitter or on the Discord. And then as time passed, they're like, oh, yeah, the way development really works is if they delayed it 3 months, that doesn't mean co-op's in those 3 months, and it doesn't mean the game's ready in those 3 months. And Joe Staten, in this video, I think at this point where it's playing right now, is literally talking about how we need a start point. We need to have these goals in mind to get this game out, and then we start our roadmap. As it is a live service game for hopefully up to 10 years, we need to hit this release, get version 1.0 out, and then quickly start iterating and getting everything that's missing and new that we have in the works. So I think as people got sort of still upset, still wish it was there, but understanding just, okay, this is what it is, and delaying the whole thing just for co-op is silly.
I think, but that's, the people that could come to that logical conclusion, that's the benefit of discussion. And sometimes I tend to forget that too. And, but that's the good side, right? Those people, like all of us who kind of came together on the same page, all the people in the Discord that did, it's that was never a problem. The problem that I saw more than the emotional reaction was the emotional reaction that led to developer harassment and virtual assault, right? I mean, that's the biggest. I think
take 343 off Halo. Ugh.
Yeah, or fire Bonnie Ross and all that kind of garbage. It's like, that is not, you have such a limited porthole view of what's actually going on their development. I have no idea. None of us do. So to call for somebody's head,
well, I mean,
metaphorically speaking, is
and here's the thing, because there could be stuff that comes out, right? Like, there's always a lot of times, after the fact, you'll find out. Well, I guess some things that you'll find out is that a lot of the best games of all time went through shit shows, for lack of a better word, and and sometimes it doesn't work out. We talked about Cyberpunk, so and at the end of the day, you have to let the thing launch before you can really judge the product, and I think that's one of the things we're saying. But the thing I say is, like, okay, so if people want to make the point that that's so and so screwed up, or we're going to get into kind of where this game is right now. At the end of the day, the human beings do make mistakes. They probably weren't, they are behind, right? This isn't what they planned for, and that may have been that way even without COVID. We don't know exactly the circumstance, but again, it's kind of taking that understanding and understanding too that that's not unusual in AAA development. A lot of times you don't get that information, and I feel like a lot of the audience that's just going nuts over comparing it to Bungie need to really watch the Halo 2 documentary where they cut where all the developers are sleeping under the desk and they cut a third of the game, and everything that you saw at E3 the year before was imaginary. It might as well have been CGI because it did not exist. So there's a lot of things that happen, and at the end of the day, I think what we just need to focus on is where is this thing, so what we have to focus on where it lands, right? And that's the only way that you can really give them a score is where does this thing land? We've played lots of great games that have been delayed, and once you play them, Miyamoto's had that quote out there that you forget that it was delayed, right? If it's a great game, and so we have to give them that chance. And there's a lot of reason. I think we'll kind of say this as we move forward in topics, but there is some reasons for optimism, and I think we had them a few weeks ago, so we'll get back into that. But Mike, I know I kind of left you off for a little bit. I want to get some more of your thoughts.
When it comes to the whole more of a focus on single player, the thing is that this delay of the co-op mode is like a double-edged sword. Obviously, it gives them more time to work in co-op, but then it also puts more pressure for the single player to.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's that saying that and I'm not saying this applies to Infinite, but co-op can make a bad game fun. And so as good as the single player is going to be, there's a very, very good chance that co-oping through the campaign is going to be even better. And so this puts more of an onus and puts more of a pressure on 343 to really deliver on that single player experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's definitely one thing to consider. And, when it came to the emotional reactions, I wonder how many people, and I know, I don't know. I'm not going to assume it was how many of them it was, but I just wonder how many of the people that asked for a delay wasn't strictly just because of campaign, but because of what it may hinted at. Just when, I saw a developer just yesterday on Twitter, when it was leaked that it was launched in December 8th, they retweeted it saying delay Halo Infinite. And this is a developer saying that, so that,
it all hinges on the state it launches in, right? Which is something we don't know.
And the one thing that I wanted to, I don't know if it's playing devil's advocate, but I wanted to ask you guys, okay, so
ask it.
I forgot. I forgot who mentioned it, but Stanton talking about it being a game as a platform or a service, and that kind of is justification for the way that they're able to delay aspects of it. I don't think it was the right way to phrase it, because there's a stigma surrounding service games that they intentionally delay aspects or hold back aspects because it's a service, and a lot of times it's seen negatively.
He didn't actually say it. He didn't posit it as that. That was my interpretation of hey, it is a platform.
But he did highlight that in that video. Yeah. He did highlight it.
But I mean, do you want him to hide the fact? I mean, Halo Infinite is a platform, right? It is a live service game.
It is. But I guess what I'd ask you guys is, do you think that was the right direction?
I think it was, actually.
And I know this is really hard for any one of us to gauge or judge until we play the game. Obviously, but just, just what we know, they're, huh?
I was gonna say, can I touch on that really quick to answer your question?
No, yeah. Yeah. I mean, just, there is a part of me that makes me wonder, obviously their ambitions are higher than potentially any other Halo game, but was that the right call to make?
I don't know if the phrasing necessarily mattered. I think people would have pulled apart aspects from that conversation that they wanted to. What I would say is that, and this is something I meant to mention earlier, but that this kind of brings back up. I'm about to launch something myself, and I have all these preconceived notions about how the user is going to interact with something, right? But until it's in somebody's hands, I have no fucking clue, right? So it's like one of the benefits. I just started thinking about this as Mike, you and I kind of like we're kind of exchanging just now. The the ability that Microsoft is one of those. Ursula and I were joking about it the other day. They are a data company. Like they probably know how many times you teabag, which is horrible for me. But
Or how many times
the
Mike
ni-
gets teabagged? I want to see that stat.
yeah, but the
Keep that
nice thing
private.
about this is that it gives them 3 months or however much time of telemetric data to then hopefully improve their co-op systems, right? They can actually see how people are actually playing campaign. They're actually seeing how they interact with the systems and the AIs and these sort of side missions and things like that. So, if we're looking at checkpointing being an issue, maybe that helps with that. So I'm not sure if the positioning of it was the right call, but as somebody who sucks at positioning, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that, but I think that it wouldn't have really mattered. Seeing the reaction that we saw, I'm not sure that it would have mattered how it was posited. But I think there's definitely some benefits from doing it the way they are.
Well,
So.
and we talked earlier about their transparency, right? Is there anything wrong with? I know there's a lot of people that are have some trepidation about the fact that Halo is going to be a platform. Mike, we talked. This was probably one of our first shows. I think you were very concerned about this being a platform and not just being a game.
Well, a lot of that stemmed from it wasn't so much the platform part, it was the 10-year part.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that rolled their eyes to that because that just brings back things of like Destiny.
Yeah.
They had their 10-year plan.
It'll be 20, don't worry about it.
Anytime like just it I don't want to call it pretentious, but like it's just like you can't assume what 10 years is going to look like. So to call anything. What now?
Putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, kind of like
we don't even know if the Earth is going to survive.
Exactly.
A pretty good idea.
So
It's
like
not.
it wasn't so much about the platform part. It was the 10-year part that just like I would not have mentioned that. Like if that's an internal goal or plan, yeah. Like
I almost wonder if that's what they think the generation's going to last, and this is going to be this generation's Halo game.
I think so.
Well, but that's.
Mike, we're old men yelling at the clouds. You got to understand, and we don't.
One thing I wanted to say was like the live service aspect. When they made this game, when they made the intention of making this game a live service game, a platform game, that gives them pros and cons, right? One of the pros for them is, hey, when we launch this game, that's not the complete game, right? We can launch more and more. In fact, there's a developer thread about someone who worked at Respawn, and he had this thing, and it was so well spread. He was like, a live service game is never complete until its last update launches, technically. You know what I mean? Which is end of life, which is possibly a decade after. I mean, something like Apex Legends will go for 10 years, for sure. I have little doubt. Rocket League, same thing. You know what I mean? Warzone probably too, to be honest. It'll just keep updating. Yeah. But in terms of Halo, what I want to say is that Halo Infinite on December 8th will not be Halo Infinite on December 8th, 2022. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The game will be pretty different. It'll be look different. It'll be received different. I mean, look at Sea of Thieves. That's a pretty good example, I feel. Though, hopefully, Halo does not launch the way Sea of Thieves launched.
Yes. And see, that's the thing.
Yes,
like...
but we don't. Signs aren't really pointing towards that, in my opinion. Especially because we know the multiplayer.
It has a campaign. By default, it's got more than Sea of Thieves.
If Sea of Thieves launched with the Tall Tales, it would have been reviewed way better.
Its combat's a lot better than Sea of Thieves. Sorry, John.
Sea of Thieves today, for example, is a completely
John
look
hates
at
the combat in Sea of Thieves, though. So
look at the Metacritic score for Sea of Thieves. It's what, 61 or something? It's like this
67.
It's this really low number that is nowhere near representative of what the game currently is. Reflective, yeah. Halo Infinite's gonna be somewhat similar, I imagine. And one last thing I wanted to mention
63.
was 63. Yeah, so it was a low 60. One
No,
last
I'm
thing I
saying
wanted
what
to
Halo
mention-
will be.
Oh, sorry. Was with co-op launching with a season, to me that says it's not going to just launch. It's not going to be like, hey, we just added co-op in. It's going to be like, hey, season 2 is going to be co-op focused, meaning we've got co-op challenges, possibly co-op levels, cooperative, fun stuff to do in the campaign based purely off this new feature we're adding in. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
what. That's one of the pros of being a platform, being a live service, is you can kind of make more of an event of what.
You soft launch every 3 months.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Basically.
don't know if I would make an event of it because
It'd be fun
there's-
though.
okay, you can spin it, and this is the marketing part of me coming out. You can spin it in a way where, because what if this is when intentionally or the original plan for that side co-op mode was supposed to launch, like 3 months, where you can use your custom characters type deal.
You mean like yeah,
like a
okay.
Spartan
It's like
Ops.
it was like an evolution of Spartan
Like the
Ops.
next part of the campaign,
Mhm.
you could say.
I would spin it as like, now you can do that, and then of course you're going to mention campaign co-op, but I wouldn't celebrate the campaign co-op thing. Like, if that makes sense, I would
you be
mention
ashamed
I'll
of
make
it though?
known.
It's a feature you've worked on and you're adding, right? Might as well
No,
put some
but
fanfare
like, you risk, if you're celebrating it, then you risk people be like, well, yeah, that should have been
yeah,
there.
but screw
Like,
those
you
people.
risk,
Honestly,
like-
I mean,
Yeah,
like those
like-
are the
we're
people that
We're
you
going
have
to
to pay
talk about
attention
that.
Preach, Ursula.
you risk like
Narratives. Don't be scared.
relighting the vitriol.
Yeah,
And,
fair enough.
I feel like sometimes Xbox fans, they go to bed worrying about what narratives.
Yeah, I mean that's what most of the
Because
talk
we've
has
been
been.
conditioned.
Yeah, we had so much
I've-
good talk for a while about the multiplayer tech test, and then it just went right back
Oh
to
yeah.
Takes
narratives.
one thing.
So I do want to, the platform thing, we talked about that last year, and I think, and you're not the only one, Mike. I give you crap because you can take it, because you have no soul and no
that's what you said.
feelings.
No.
Yeah. But we discussed this and we didn't agree on it, and I think there's other people in our community that don't agree on it, especially part of the enthusiasts. A lot of us traditionalists, we see how games changed over the last generation. Really, I mean, with AAA, it's pretty much all platforms, and games don't launch complete anymore. It was a thing that a lot of people that are yelling to the clouds now were kind of warning us back when we got our first patch on the OG Xbox. And I remember this because I was in the GameSpot forums, system warring back in those days, and they were like, you got your first patch, you're never going to get complete games anymore. And you know what, to some point, I guess there's always a nuance to it, right? Like to point the right that it can be kind of a crutch. You do see some games that don't launch complete, or it can be a fallback aspect. But the thing that we kind of, go ahead. You want to jump in there? Go ahead.
It's just really funny because if people go back and look at the revisions that companies would do on CD versions of games, where they would just keep revising them over and over again. But they wouldn't say anything. They would just revise it, and you wouldn't know. And then so you get different versions of the game depending on when you bought it or when the CD was pressed. It's like, this stuff's always happened. It's just generally better now. There are certainly some times where things got forced out way too fast, and they then relied on patches. But I mean, cart revisions, CD revisions, freaking floppy disk revisions, it's always been a thing. It just wasn't trumpeted before.
Yeah.
And if you had the original copy, you were screwed. You didn't get I mean, that's the thing. Like the Miyamoto quote is and I was actually thinking about this the other day, Abe, because somebody mentioned it a while back on a different game, but I'm like, that hasn't been accurate in a long time. I mean, look at Destiny. Destiny launched and was atrocious for at least 9 months, and by the time the first one ended, or by the time the second one came out, rather, it was lauded as a fantastic game. So like the idea that, because his quote was a delayed a bad game is always bad. A rush game is something. It's like it's
bad game is always bad. Yeah,
A bad game's always bad, but something along the lines of like
the late game
games.
can be good or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Someone
been so long
Google it
since I've
for
read.
Christ's sake, Jesus.
Yeah, I can't. I don't have my glasses on, so I want to be able to read it if I did.
So what
That's
Daniel's saying is that if Miyamoto would have had a DeLorean, gone to the future,
Right.
today,
Yeah.
see what
He would
happened.
have been like, "Hey, asshole, stop using my quote. This shit doesn't apply anymore."
A delayed game is
Here.
eventually good. A bad game
Yes.
is bad forever.
Right. And
I think this still applies to a game that doesn't have a lot of hype at launch. Like Destiny got carried by its hype, whereas if Destiny wasn't Destiny, if it was any other game,
What about like No Man's Sky?
it would have
right?
probably died before.
No Man's Sky got hyped to
No Man's
hell and
Sky's-
back by
No Man's Sky
Sony.
got hyped, but it got such anti-hype at launch that how many people were actually playing it then? But they still
Right.
kept working on it
was
slowly, little by little.
It was very popular at launch. It sold a ton.
Really?
And it
Yeah.
took years for it to actually then become, hey, actually, you guys should load this back up and update it. It went from being pretty crappy to being pretty great.
but
I
it was
put in
like
probably 40.
Steam it was like the highest returned game on Steam
No
ever.
Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky was when it came out, absolutely. So like, yeah, it may have sold well on PlayStation, but it definitely did not make a ton of money at launch on PC.
Fallout 76. I feel like that's a better example then, right?
Yes.
Didn't too well at
Yeah.
launch.
That was actually, I think when I was going through those Metacritic things on Game Pass, I think that was that under 50? It was pretty bad.
It was bad, yeah. At launch,
it
it was
was-
It's one of the lowest.
So, and listen, like I know, again, some people are, I mean, nobody in our chat is, calling us out right now, but somebody's going to listen to this and be like, swearing at us. And that's, the problem. And you guys got to stop doing that. And you're encouraging developers to do this. The
Consumers edition.
That's
Just
kinda
depends
what I
on
was
how
gonna
many
touch on. Like,
burner
we-
accounts
I-
Mike
I-
has.
Mike speak for them so that they can.
Well, no. Like, like there's examples of it, but we shouldn't use them as excuses.
Yeah. I mean,
No,
you
we
know,
shouldn't.
yeah.
We
No, it's
shouldn't.
not an
I agree.
excuse.
I mean,
I'm
there's
simply
opposite
saying
examples
that
too. You're right, like Anthem, right?
Yeah.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, it's
It's not an
just
excuse
because
at all.
it can happen, just because it could turn out. Now,
Well-
obviously the hope here is that Halo is a high 80s, low 90s. I hate to get into scores, but that's
I'm
what
going to do
the
my
internet
part. I've already
rides
got
on.
that 10.0 written on our site.
Jesus Christ. No.
They pay
But,
me. That people say that you get paid, so
I mean-
I'm going to give them a 10 so they pay me.
Oh,
That's not how
God,
it works.
No. Oh no.
Yeah, they already
But
paid us
like,
with the thing.
I'm hoping that it starts high and goes even higher. It doesn't start at
agree.
a 60
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, nobody was making excuses or saying that like games should launch bad so they can become good. It was the fact that the idea that a bad game that launches bad is always bad is not at all. It's not born in reality anymore.
Especially not for Microsoft and how many games they've resuscitated after
State of
the
Decay
launches.
2,
Yeah.
Sea of
Yeah,
Thieves.
State of-
That hit 10 million players. That
Or
means
even
good
ones
5
that just
million
get better
I
and
mean,
better.
and CD and Cyberpunk was delayed how many times, and it was still
Yep.
atrocious on console.
that.
So like,
That still needs a lot of work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
yeah,
but,
absolutely.
All right, so-
I guess my main point on that is you don't want that stigma on when you're a tentpole IPs.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
I-
like
I-
it's
I
one
agree
thing
with
for an
Maybe I
IP
do.
like
What
What?
does Microsoft?
You don't know me. Maybe I do want that, Mike. Hmm?
You don't know
Yeah.
me.
No, we all agree with you there for sure. Ideally, the game does not launch in a bad state. If it
No,
does,
it-
though, not the end of the world.
No, here's the thing. I don't think it would launch in a bad
I don't
I
think so.
really do think that they understand that. One thing you can say about Microsoft, again, they're just a corporation, so this is not like protecting them or coming to their defense. This is just kind of analyzing how they've been over the last few years. They do hear what people say, right? They are very aware of the narratives. And sometimes they overcompensate for that. In this particular case, obviously they prioritize things, and we saw how the last few games that launched turned out, and I think that for the most part they've been pretty polished for what they were, and I do believe that is a narrative they have to work to control, especially with the Game Pass thing. Not there's
And
a lot
owning
of
Bethesda now.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, they've done a really good job the last couple of years.
Yeah,
I
Microsoft.
can't think. There's a stark difference between the way that like State of Decay 2 launched.
And
And
Recore.
any of the
Psychonauts 2,
I'm sorry,
or compared to
Yeah.
Psychonauts 2, which
Yeah.
is like
Psychonauts
Ugh.
2.
it's
Flight Sim, any of the games. Like the last couple of years have been really solid when it comes to polish and
I did need to
state of
plug
the
a
game.
keyboard into my Xbox though for Flight Sim. That was kind
I
of.
will. Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
not do that.
If you
I
played
saw
it on
just-
PC, it had you set for PC controller
Yeah.
setting by
No,
default.
I did.
Yeah.
And you didn't need to plug a keyboard in.
So
I was
if
like,
you
oh,
kn-
what is happening?
Did you ever
Like-
use a controller on PC?
That's what I was going to say. I think that was it because I did a combination of controller and keyboard on the
Okay.
PC.
Yeah, we had to put out a tweet for the fix that I found. So
I actually Googled your tweet to figure. I'm like, I remember Naughty had mentioned something. What was it again?
well, yeah, because I was like, this is absurd. I was like, yeah, it was frustrating as hell.
Yeah.
I'm still bummed that there's no like easy invert camera option, but I digress.
Oh, you're one of
Oh, no audio, which is really weird because I haven't changed a thing. Yeah, no, I hear you. They're saying they don't hear us in chat. Let me put a
Let me just double check this.
desktop audio on. How does that sound,
Okay.
boyos?
They
It's
now
back.
said we've got Jesus Christ in the building. God damn it. Yes.
All right, are we back, guys? We're
Yeah,
back.
I dropped the
Uh,
NDI and I put desktop on and it's working.
All right.
Okay, so we're good.
Boys.
All right.
Damn, I'm good.
Thanks for letting us know, chat. We appreciate all you. So yeah, I think these last few topics kind of actually help us transition into a lot of the narratives that are going around the game right now. And I think not necessary to push back at any of them because I feel like a lot of these narratives are going to be kind of nuanced, but I think we can bring a little bit more perspective to some of these conversations. Again, I feel like a lot of these, there's been a lot of comments made out of emotion, and even I'll be honest, like when I first heard the news and I started feeling the reaction, that energy kind of pulled me with it too. And I'm like, yeah, they should delay the game. And that lasted like an hour. And I was like,
Dan and I started talking to you, and
no, you don't convince me about anything.
oh, you were still Jesus. I forgot.
Hey. Yeah. Same.
I make up my own mind, but no, I'm like, yeah, it's not logical. When you kind of start thinking about it, especially with it being a platform. So let's talk about that because one of the narratives that we've heard over the last few days is they've had 6 years to make this game.
Oh yeah, I was going to talk about that.
And Bungie, and Bungie had more at launch than they did in 3. So let's start with that one.
One thing I want to say is like, I don't think anyone should be shitting on Bungie or 343.
No, absolutely.
Like,
I shit on Bungie for Destiny, not for Halo as much.
But I've seen both, and it's like,
I think it's more like instead of putting
Exactly.
Bungie on this huge elevated level, they're not gods, guys. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what it is.
They made it my favorite, original trilogy ever.
I'm not saying put them on some kind of godly pedestal, but they do deserve the credit of.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I'm also
Hey.
referring to the people who refuse to see any of the previous faults and not the previous 3 Halos, and either they didn't pretend it didn't happen or they just didn't know or something.
Well,
There's a lot of this stuff.
It's not even whataboutism or saying like, hey, they didn't get this right or that right. These are just not apples to apples comparisons. They don't have the same task. Whether we like it or not, I've talked about this on other podcasts that aren't Halo related. AAA gaming is now becoming platform gaming. Basically, you're going to probably have a lot of the things that you used to consider the AAA that you're upset that your favorite companies don't, the games they no longer make. A lot of this stuff is going to be made by bigger indies, AA companies. There's a whole thing happening in the industry that
Indies
is a whole other.
punching up above
Yeah,
above their weight.
It's it's a separate topic, but when you think about what does a AAA mean now? These are your platforms. These are your golden cows within all these
How big is their sandbox?
Yeah.
AAA big.
And so what 343 did is 343 has been asked, over the last 6 years to build not a game, but a platform. They had to redo the technology underlying this at the engine.
Whole new engine.
Yeah, they really had, because the way it was not agile enough. That's one of the reasons why there's rumors that they looked, I'm just going to say rumors, that they looked at other, engines and things like that, because the way that the engine would not have been, it wasn't adequate in its form to kind of support a game that was going to need continuous content, quality content regularly. So, a lot of this development cycle was around building that, and that technology really is a huge piece of these, this entire cycle. And what they're trying to deliver now isn't just a game. There's going to be content when this game releases on December 8th. There will be content that is deep in development that you won't even know about. Mm-hmm. And I know what all the other, all Mike's friends are saying right now is they're like, well, don't release it until that content is ready. And the thing is, when that content is ready, and if they would release that, when they release that content, there will be other content that is deep in development that you don't know about. It's going to be a cycle. And that is when they said 10 years. I think I understand people don't like that, and I understand the trepidation with platforms, but also understand the opportunity with that too, right? So I mean, we can kind of talk about that maybe as a separate subject, but there is it is a give and take. But regardless of whether you prefer it or you don't prefer it, the fact that they were given directions to go this route, to build something that was going to be able to support ongoing content, really meant that they were not delivering anything close to what Bungie was delivering, which was a game with 10 missions. And again, my favorite franchise of all time, period. But they delivered a campaign, and they delivered a multiplayer, and they came out with a few multiplayer packs. And that's all they had to do over the course of that 4 years or whatever, mm-hmm. however long it took to release the DLC. And that was it. That was the expectation. So I want to just turn it over to you guys because I've been talking a lot. So anybody kind of want to jump in on what we just said there? Like, is there any? I
think Daniel does.
Oh, Daniel, there. Yeah, I didn't see you.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned that Respawn developer earlier, and he had a great, massive thread. I was trying to find the developer's name, and I can't find it because I've got way too many bookmarks. But he's basically saying, it's important to remember that the entire content model, the entire, he didn't mention this, but we think about the scale, right? The scale of a game now versus then, in terms of like comparing Halo 2, even the amount of staff that you have is a lot less because there's a lot less systems. You think about how much there are so many background systems running at any given point now in games. And I'm not just talking about Halo. So it's that's, to me, has always been the problem when people are comparing, 343's games at, in 2021 versus a Halo game released in 2020 or 2010, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Like you said earlier, Abe, it's not apples to apples. If we were talking about Destiny 2, let's look at Bungie's release of that versus Halo 5. It's still completely different. You can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
they're released around the same time, but there's just so many differences that I don't like entertaining those kinds of conversations, because they're usually from people who have no idea what goes into making anything from a development standpoint. But more importantly, it's there's such a vastly different set of scale compared to Halos of old. It's like you said, a 10 mission campaign built in a nice little sandbox, and then you've got your multiplayer, and then maybe you have Forge, and then eventually you had Firefight. But those were built over time. Building an entire engine for anybody's standards. I mean, there's a reason so many developers use Unreal Engine these days and not build, like, it's not the 90s where everybody was building their own engines, because it is extremely difficult to do now. Like, the sense of scale, the sense of or the amount of scale, the amount of systems that you have running in any game these days, it's just one of those things that I think people tend to gloss over and not realize that this isn't a game that was built like the engine that Halo Reach was built on was still the same Blam engine. It just got upgraded over time. It was iterated. This is a whole new ballgame.
I mean, I think Slip Space is still based on Blam. It's not like they started. It's not like they started from scratch.
No, they didn't.
Like there are systemic aspects that you're still there's legacy things that are still going to be
right. There might be forks, but saying that it's because it has a foundation that it's not starting from scratch seems to downplay that a little bit too, because Unreal 5 isn't starting from scratch. It's still an iteration of Unreal 4. I mean, it's basically foundations that they replace elements of. You know, there may no longer be Java in there. There may no longer be elements of Python or whatever, but it's still...
I'm not trying to downplay anything. It's just when people say from scratch or from the ground up or new engine, people get the wrong idea.
Yeah,
and they think that it's like code written from scratch, day one.
By that same logic, I mean, I see what you're saying, but by that same logic, there's not a single engine out there today that's not got its basis in some form.
Which is why, like, I always have issues with the new engine.
No, but new doesn't imply from scratch, though, right? New just implies a new engine.
It like Daniel said, it almost never does, but people take it that way.
Yeah, which is kind of stupid.
And it's like one of the big aspects with the Blam engine was always content creation. Like Bungie and 343 both have voiced issues when it comes to like iteration time and stuff like that. And I imagine and a lot of times when new engines are created, a lot of times that's like the renderer is rewritten, like the streaming aspects, the rendering pipeline and stuff like that. And I'm sure that there's like I give 343 the credit that they've probably rewritten the Blam engine to such the extent that they can call it a different engine. Yeah. Like I'm not trying to dismiss or downplay that, but like
Moonity, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah. So
that's fair, Mike. And if you didn't correct that, somebody else would have probably tweeted us out. And
I'm not even trying to correct it. Because everything that Daniel said still applies. Like there's still nothing. Like I'm not saying anything that would contradict that.
One thing's for sure, though, I feel like some people dismiss all the engine work. They're like, nope, they had 6 years. They didn't. The engine work was nothing. It's the same engine. They didn't spend a year and a half, 2 years on that. No, none of that. And that's also where you're like, nah, that's not right. You can
spend a lot of time even iterating an engine, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, it's not just Blam. If you kind of look at the history with Crytek, you look at you look at Unreal. And we know right now that that Bethesda is just like, I mean, you're probably going to find out that it's going to be it's going to feel like a different engine, right?
Well, look at the creation engine. Look at the creation engine. Look at the Call of Duty engine. That's based off of Gamebryo, and that's based off Quake 3, like at its core. Yeah. And there might be still lines of code and stuff that legacy code in there, but it is largely their own engines. And I think that it's safe to say that applies with the 343s itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're compiling in quantum theory, you're not writing anything new. So I see your point.
Yeah. And the unfortunate part of that whole they've had 6 years and all that stuff. Where I think a lot of people lose sight on, like, blaming 343. A lot of the people that are still at 343 now busting their ass are likely not the same people that made the decisions to put them in whatever boat they're in right now.
Yeah, right.
And that's the thing, like, and not, I'm not trying to make there had been some turnover at the studio that's like well known. It's like that one, that's likely for good reason and in a lot of respects, but like anyone that you can blame or you may want to blame or should blame, they're no longer there. So there's no reason to be like, you yourself had 6 years. Like that's not always the case, because the people calling the shots or the people that are directing or put people in whatever directions that they were in, that's They're not
Well,
there.
and even though, we talked about this before, but like even so, like again, so they've hired a lot of people with a lot of talent. Like if you go look at the list of people, some of the people that work at 343, and you look at them at LinkedIn, these are not like, they didn't just pull guys off the street and say, "Can you code for Halo?" These are guys with pretty good credentials. And yeah, there's definitely there definitely has been challenges and that stuff. And I think, like I said, that's going to probably come out. So we don't want to sit here and push back against that, because we'll probably look like fools at some point here.
Oh yeah.
When Schreier comes out with his book or whatever. Yeah. So, but the thing I think we just focus on is like, so here's like kind of what the situation is. It's not exactly the task they were given was not. I would say the task that Halo is really not matched by any other AAA project that I can think of. Mm-hmm. The Forge that we should see in 2022 is not going to be anything like the Forge you saw in 2007. It's probably not going to be. It's probably going to be a lot more advanced than the one you saw, in 2015. Because if it
16.
Otherwise, yeah, or 16. No, 15.
Sorry.
17.
Did it come out in the year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, otherwise, why would it take? Why would that be 7 years later? So there was a lot of the campaign that they're building is not the co-op they have to implement is not the same as the co-op that was implemented in 2007 or even 2015. It's a lot more factors you have to consider when you're in a wide world, right?
A lot more platforms.
And I know Nick. Yeah, and Nick loves that call out, right? Like, yeah, they whether we like it or not, whether we think
they should have dropped Xbox One.
I mean, so obviously they had to make it for 4 platforms, going through a console transition when tools weren't ready, and yes, they probably were already behind before COVID hit, but now COVID's here, and this is not the same Forge. It's not going to be the same multiplayer like foundationally, right? And then the campaign is going to add new complications. So it's not making excuses. It's just being real about if you're going to make that comparison, that just doesn't fit. That's all I'm going to say. There's just not anything else that we can look at in the AAA space, because I think the closest is Call of Duty, but there's nothing in Call of Duty that
Destiny is probably the closest.
Yeah, maybe Destiny.
Because that is an open world. Not open world, but as open world hubs with checkpoints.
Yeah,
and stuff like I imagine. When it comes to co-op, like what Tyler Owens, I think was the developer's name. Like he mentioned the checkpoint system being a major point of consideration. That Reddit post mentioned the checkpoint system being a major point of consideration. And that does make sense. So things like that and that's the open world hub aspect is the biggest departure. I wouldn't even say the live aspect is the biggest departure. I'd say the open world aspect is more of a game changer, let's say, not and where you have to consider things like especially when you have different times of day. So you have to factor in things like the different, especially with the crazy ambition they have with if it's night, you're going to have different types of patrols than day. Yeah. Or if you're coming in rolling with a tank, like there's a lot of things to consider that
there are a lot more complexities.
Yeah. What about Nick's comment last week? We should address that.
Oh God. Really quick. I just want to say, I don't think anybody, I think that's one of the things that I've liked about our discussion, across the board, is I don't think anybody's ignored the issues that existed on the project or the team previously. But the way that I like to describe it is that, Staten came in and your car got a new engine, but right as the car got a new engine, 2 of your tires just completely jumped off the axle. That was COVID, right? So it's they kind of started getting on the right path, and then shit hit the fan. So,
or a huge traffic jam.
It's like you got an extra year has been said, and oh my God, imagine how bad it would have been then. But it's like the amount of time lost last year, so much of that was just spent trying to figure out how to work from home with this many people with
that
a
you
system
can't
that's not
fix
built
by
for it.
calling another studio.
Yeah, with their own tool sets, their own data, their own pipelines and everything. trying to figure out how to make that all work, losing a ton of time that way. And then, even then, they've been working however long that way at far diminished, output.
Yeah.
It's no one's doing the same amount of work. So I don't know that the game would have been in a great state a year ago. It could have been, but it might have required a ton of crunch. It probably
Why
wouldn't have
couldn't
been.
they have just
Feature
called it
cuts.
Moon and got all their technology transported over the the Ethernet, and then started building it that way?
Their
Doesn't that
50
work?
people system would have worked great with the 500 at 343.
Oh,
Is this the segment where we can just go at every one of Nick's comments from last week?
Just go into last week's podcast and just watch the chat and see how many times I yelled at him. And yeah, I could go on for hours.
I
was
don't know,
like,
but then
that's
it
not how
just
any of
gets
that works.
the chat is just making excuses. Oh, that was a British accent, but whatever. I can't do Australian. Okay?
I don't even try.
Yeah,
I
I
know
don't
nothing
Making
about it.
excuses, mate.
Um,
That's not how this works.
But Brit, chances are they're gonna want all of you your own entity is what I think they're trying to do, because we've had tethered multiplayer and a lot of people don't like it. State of Decay's tethered. Dark Souls, I love the series, but holy crap, it's multiplayer, like 5 different hoops you have to jump through to play the game.
Destiny is very tethered. When you're actually in a mission, you are constantly
Really?
pulled, rejoining allies. That's what
Yeah,
it'll count down from 5, and then you get teleported to everyone else at certain checkpoints.
Yeah, I feel like Mike when I'm playing with my wife, because I'm like, oh, look at that, that's pretty, and then
Let's look at this rock.
Well, and those are very linear levels, so you can do that stuff too, right? Like that might be more jarring if you're like in this wide world, and you're like you want somebody up at one area to snipe down, and you want to flank them from another side, and that's why you don't mess that up. That there's probably a lot of great opportunity. Not just this is again goes to what I was just saying about the standpoint that they're building this platform, and everything that's being developed here not only has to be good when it launches, or that not only does this game have to be good when it launches, or obviously they want it to be good when it launches, it's got to make sure that it's going to be a good foundation for all that additional content that comes out. So and I've heard this thing, and I want to be honest, initially I thought it too. I was like, well, why couldn't you just have some half-assed co-op to begin, and then, but you're again,
Tether everyone.
Yeah, you're limiting yourself for the future. You're limiting the audience's expectations of what that is for the future if you launch it. So if you have a tethered co-op and it's just not that much fun in open world, and you can't do a whole lot with it, that's going to be the expectation. You're going to set that impression going forward. I think they are better off making sure they nail that, making sure that it feels dynamic and it's in fun in these wider environments where there's going to be a lot more opportunity. And that could be something that as they launch more content, people are going to go, the co-op guys are going to go, oh, I want to go back and play that. And I get it. Some of them, that you might lose a handful of them at the beginning, but I think it is the right answer to make sure you get the foundation correct.
Yeah.
Are you hitting something?
Yeah, he's on preach mode today.
I mean, even in a traditional type game, co-op is a different beast than competitive multiplayer, because something as simple, not simple,
It's
but
where
something
an AI is.
exactly. Thank you. That's exactly
I know
like
exactly where you're at.
if there's like 3 brutes where they're at, like if you're going to be able to play with your teammates, your friends, you have to coordinate where that AI is, and then on top of that, there's vehicles, there's all of the different aspects, and then you add on the open world aspect into it on top of that, with all the dynamitism. Does that make sense? With like the
Dynamitis.
Dynamism, I think, isn't it?
is
I
that
can't
what I said?
remember.
Just
That
with
sounds
less.
like a disease.
No, I'm thinking that's the word. I was just trying to help Mike out.
The dynamics, of like again, the 24-hour day-night cycle and stuff like that. And
Dynamism.
It's a lot of work, right?
That's
dynamism.
the word. Yep.
Wait,
So-
is dynamism?
Yes,
I said dynamitism, I think.
Just make up
You can't
words.
see that.
I can't argue when you start making up words.
I don't trust you. You're not wearing your glasses.
But
I don't have my glasses. Fair enough. Yeah.
Disease.
Oh man! All right.
I
Well,
lost
so
my train of thought.
yeah, we did. Well, that one just went off the cliff.
You were saying it's
so I
really
think-
complicated, right? With
Yeah.
the different
Yeah,
interactions.
like co-op is a totally
Alright.
different beast than competitive multiplayer.
Yeah, even
That-
more so than it's ever been in a Halo game, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
By
exactly.
far.
And
It's
so
fundamentally different in a way that they have to really figure out as well as implement. Like, what is going to
Now-
actually be fun?
I will push back
No.
on. No, well, hear me out. So
I don't have a choice.
We'll come back for intermission.
what? No. So I completely understand where that developer was coming at, where he said that no service game will ever be content complete at launch. I get that because, like Ursel said, and Abe said, like, Halo Infinite and launch is going to be completely different than December 2022. But I don't think that really touched on. I don't know if people were really wanting content complete as in everything at launch, whereas I think, people just wanted more or less feature complete,
like
co-op.
everything Halo's had in the past. They went
Yeah,
to
yeah.
for the
Like,
get-
start, and so even though he did specifically say this thread is not to excuse 343's decisions. So in that vein, you could say that he wasn't his Twitter thread wasn't in justification of co-op being delayed, but it could give reason to it. So I guess that's my point.
Oh, I was
Error.
like,
Okay,
yeah,
I was like,
I saw something off to my side and
Shiny.
squirrel.
what the,
Does not
what the
compute.
hell?
I just saw this look in your eyes, man. It was like, whoa.
It's been a long time since I've seen the blue screen of death. But anyways,
My issue with that is people are going to call it, no matter how good of a campaign Halo Infinite's going to have, and it can have an amazing campaign, there are going to be certain people that are going to call the game content incomplete or feature incomplete or a cut up launch or
You
something.
mean the 4 out of 10 review coming from Metro?
Yeah,
I just
basically.
don't pay
Right?
attention.
And that's where I disagree, where I'm like, just because it doesn't have this, yes, admittingly very core feature of previous Halo games, I agree. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be there at launch for this one, for this to be feature complete, if you know what I mean. Because they're going to add more features down the line too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they're not going to have.
it's not going to be. It's not
But
gonna
what I
be
would say is, I don't think everyone that wouldn't consider it feature complete or trolling or being malicious or
No,
negative.
yeah, no,
Well, it
Like,
depends on how
because
the
there's-
campaign,
well-
how solid it is, how fleshed out it is, how solid it is, basically. You know what I mean?
I mean, you have to judge a game by its merits and the content of it.
Yeah.
Like, Last of Us 2 wasn't demoted points because it didn't have multiplayer like the first game did. In fact, it still doesn't have it. But it was judged by the game that you got. So if the campaign
but
is
I
good and the
don't know if that's
multiplayer
the
is
same.
good, then that should. Well, I mean, it's not like it's not like
Multiplayer's
the
never
hit.
been a key focus of the series.
Well, we talk
or
to
the
some
two
people and they'll die.
Like
by it.
I get what you're saying, and I don't
Yeah.
disagree because the first game did have multiplayer at launch, and so if you're going to apply that same logic, but I think that was a lesser like with those games, the single player's always the campaign's always been the focus.
Sure, but I'm simply saying you have to judge a game like if it didn't have campaign at launch, because that was the other line that we saw on Twitter and whatnot, that would have been infinitely more damaging. But that would have been definitely something that I would have said, well, that for a lot of people, campaign is as core, and I mean just the narrative, the story is as core as multiplayer.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so that would have been worthy of
Or
judgment.
even
on that
like
front.
big team battle, if it didn't have it at launch, I'd be pretty mad. You know, what I mean, I was really irritated that
Yeah.
Halo 5 didn't, and even when it got it, it was like this watered down version. You know?
Mhm.
And honestly, Ursel, I touching on what you said about like I maybe I'm putting too much faith in humanity or gamers or reviewers or whatever. But if the campaign truly is amazing, if it truly is amazing, I would like to think that it's going to review well, despite it not having co-op.
I think it will too.
Like-
yeah, I mean, to be honest, should
And I
reviewers
mean,
even
honestly,
mention co-op
it
in the
doesn't
reviews?
even matter.
They don't
I really don't think it matters as much as
Fair
people
enough.
want
Well,
it to
it doesn't to
anymore.
us, but on the general public, it might to some extent. You know,
So-
like and what it's going to do. Here's the thing, like Microsoft has been doing a really good job pivoting, to live up to Phil Spencer's claims of the best first party organization. They've been doing a wonderful job of that ever since he made those, made that, like, put that flag in the ground in 2018. Like, I'm sick and tired of seeing broken narratives and old narratives online. Like, it would be great to just be able to talk about just two first-party organizations, three first-party organizations that just pump out quality titles on a consistent basis. And so, like, just giving any of that, like, negative narrative any room to breathe, I don't think is anything that, like, especially Microsoft wants.
Can you believe they didn't show the campaign yesterday or the day before? Can you believe that?
I don't get that, because they didn't promise anything about that.
They literally 5 days before said they're pretty much explicitly said we're not going to show the campaign anytime soon. We don't want it. And then came out in the blog post today, and Joseph Staten pretty much said we are in shutdown mode, which means we are polishing and bug fixing, and we are focused entirely on that. And I am not taking people off of that to go make a gameplay demo or a gameplay trailer right now. Once I feel we're closer and we're close to launch and things are good, we will get you some more gameplay trailers. And that's what he said pretty much on Thursday. And in the blog post today, it was very explicit. It's not worth our time, in my estimation, as the guy running this. So
I'm wondering if people, because when they announced the delay of the co-op, they did say we would have another look at the campaign, and I think people just assumed.
Yeah, they ignored the closer to launch part of seeing the campaign.
Yeah.
For capture footage,
I just hope we don't have to wait for the launch trailer to see it.
Gear style.
For people who don't know, when you see those vertical slices, that's not just somebody at the studio going and grabbing a current build of the game and playing it live for you.
That's the whole team.
Yeah, that takes a team to put together. It takes resources. It's generally not the real game.
July's demo was a month or two of work for a team of people. Even they didn't look great, but
it
took time.
It wasn't.
Last year.
Yeah.
Oh,
vertical slices don't. If you talk to developers, like, vertical slices aren't the game. They are. There's a lot of stuff happening there, like they basically are showing you, like, the full. It might look like you're looking at the whole world. You don't know what textures are behind that mountain. You don't know what's actually, propelling the AI, if it's really dynamic or if it's scripted for that particular situation. Again, we go back to the 2003, the Halo 2 E3 showing. That entire thing was completely fake, and it looked like they're playing something in the game, and it looked kind of like the real game. And a lot of times, these vertical slices are intended to be what they envision the game will be.
Like Anthem, right? That's a more recent example.
Yeah, and sometimes they hit, right? Like we've seen, sometimes they come really, really close.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're better. But they're not games. They take resources, and that's the thing to emphasize, is that if they would have had a campaign, like, in game, because another CGI is not going to do anything, right? So they would have had an in-game trailer. It would have taken resources, and it just, at this point in time, they're already going to December 8th. They should use every day they have to make that game as good as possible. So that's why you didn't see it, people. It's not another sign of the
apocalypse.
The apocalypse. Yeah. By the way, can we speak about the apocalypse, because that
climate change?
No.
What part of it?
That was my first thought.
There's multiple apocalypse going on right now.
The Halo.
Oh, you know who's coming back if it's the apocalypse? There we go.
Damn it, Jesse.
I
put my hair up today to avoid those comparisons.
I'm sorry. I thought you were coming back for the apocalypse.
Jesus Christ.
So, I guess just this is also going to the narrative about, like, where is the campaign right now? Like, obviously, until we get our hands on it, nobody knows. Like, none of us are playing it. Although, when people say, like, we don't have any evidence that it's going to be, good. For anybody who's played the tech preview 3 weeks ago, I think everybody here got to play that, right?
Yep.
We all played the tech preview 3 weeks ago. Put in a good amount of hours. I think I got like 15 in. Some of you guys got more, some less.
I had 300 or 400.
Yeah, something like that. You know, and after putting in 2,500
job.
hours between, you know, Halo 5 and, you know, and the MCC collection over the last generation, then go into that, we saw that they had a really good foundation, right? Like, I felt like, you know, most people who played it, if you looked on Twitter and forums, felt like the gameplay loop, the grapple shot, the movements, the AI, which, you know, it's something that people don't talk enough about when it comes down to the campaign, you know, all that stuff people were very, very high on. There was a lot of positivity around that. You play that stuff and then you go back and now you relook at the demo we got in 2020 in July, when, you know, they took us through that, and yeah, you zoom in, Craig's face doesn't show textures. But I kind of just challenge everybody to go back and look at that again after playing the game, and then you start to look at the environments, and you're like, oh, I can hit my grapple hook there. I didn't know that at the time I was watching that. You know, you start to think about what that might look like with better AI in that, and they played it. It seemed like pretty turned down. That AI didn't even look like it was, you know, previous Halos on harder difficulties. So, you know, you start to put all that stuff together and you go, they have a really good foundation for probably the best playing campaign that they've ever had. Obviously, they got to put together the mission structures and just the overall progression, and they got to nail the story. And we know graphics are going to matter more to some people than others. So there's other factors, but I would argue against the fact that we don't know. We don't have any idea how this campaign is going to be. I think that's completely bull. I think we have probably a better picture than we do for most AAA games at this point in time. But let's see how you guys feel about that, and then I guess we're going to have to go to questions and wrap up.
I think that Chief and Cortana have to kiss, or else it's a bad campaign.
Okay. So what about you?
Yep, he's gone. Yep, he ran away.
The cue Daft Punk's digital.
Give me 1 sec. I think my cat's at the door. 1 sec.
Jesus. Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel a lot better about it because of the transparency that we've gotten, and the story campaign that we got during E3, and now the tech demo that we've gotten. It felt so much more like this perfect marriage between classic and current Halo. So I think that alone, assuaged a lot of people's fears that I talked to about, you know, any of the worries about campaign. You know, I think that I think it's on the right foot.
All right. Does anybody have? I know I'm realizing that we're running really, really, really long today.
We knew we would be.
That's what happened.
Hey, at least you didn't say it was going to be a short one.
Yeah. If you don't have anything,
Well,
does anybody have anything they want to add to that?
Did you guys? I mean, I'm sure all of us here watched it, but did people in the chat? You watched that like 3-second clip in the video, the Inside Infinite video? It looked good. Like, I know it was off screen and it wasn't super focused.
Yeah.
Right, they had all the consoles too.
Yeah,
all the platforms.
But I mean, even just a little bit of gameplay looked graphically good, in my opinion. Like, the grass looked good, the foliage looked good, the scenery. Also, you can grapple to the ground in front of you. That's awesome.
That's actually pretty cool.
24/7. Like, are you kidding me?
That's how you're gonna be running around through the environment.
That's my role in Halo.
all I noticed was the OG Xbox One on fire.
Really,
I smell toast.
When it comes to the campaign, I think it's too early. Like, there's more reasons to think it's going to turn out good than bad. Like, I don't understand how anyone can just automatically assume or jump to.
Or just delayed, so it's basically Halo 5 again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, like, I'm open to
pretty much anything, eh?
Hey,
I love it.
My number's in the comments below. No, but
Hello. Oh.
Yeah, my cat is huge. He's got an eating disorder, Martin.
Oh my God, poor cat. But yeah, I think there's more reason to be optimistic and positive than not.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Honestly, when the next tech test comes and people are having fun blowing each other up in tanks and banshees and whatnot, people are gonna forget. Or not forget, but they're gonna obviously it's gonna go back to their minds.
But the people who are complaining aren't the ones that are gonna play. They're the ones who just want a console war about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like
Ah,
90%.
So I didn't
of
get-
them.
I didn't get
The
I wasn't
majority
here.
of the
no, let's
people.
not do that.
The majority of the
Do what?
people. Let's say that.
Oh no,
Like,
you
yeah.
know the
Here-
ones I'm talking about. Like, no, I'm not saying there
There's-
can't be
No,
competent criticism.
Mike's got them all blocked.
I was gonna say I wasn't here when you
I
guys
do
got to
have
do the tech test. Did anybody else get teabagged by an AI like I did?
Mhm.
I did
not
see
know.
that
What the
stuff.
heck? I was
That-
disappointed I didn't.
So by
Huh?
the way, we talked a lot about the engine, and we did talk about the just briefly on the AI. That was one of the reasons why the engine. That was one of the focuses with the engine was the AI, and I think we did get to see what it's capable of to some extent in that when we got to play the tech preview. So again, there's not a lot of talk about that because we don't know how that's going to be implemented in the campaign, but we know that that's there, and that was better than any AI that was in at least at times. Obviously
Yeah.
it had some issues here and there, but at
They could
times,
navigate the environment better than they ever could before.
yeah, it was something that we
Yeah.
haven't seen that kind of, So
Yeah,
By the way,
last
they
phase was pretty
expanded
difficult.
a lot on the AI in a blog post released like 2 hours ago. So if any of you guys are interested, I think we're probably going to cover most of that not today because we're already running pretty late.
It was
we're
poorly
already-
timed.
Yeah.
everybody's gonna have to go pee sometime soon. So let's go keep moving it forward. I think we covered the big narrative things on
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Is there anything that you guys want to stop for before we move on to the community stuff? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no.
Right? There's this one thing I put up here. The dynamic background that just went
Oh, yeah.
live for everyone. You can see on stream right now. I was gonna play the
yeah.
series bundle trailer, but my computer started to smoke. 'Cause I forgot it's 4K. It's pretty rough.
Oh,
But
yeah.
So this is just my background here. Ignore some of the games that I forgot were up there. But yeah, it's pretty nice. Chief doesn't move. The visor reflects. The stuff in the background moves. It's really neat, and everyone's got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, one of the things we did this week is we did reach out to our community and we said, we asked for questions, but if anybody had any comments, because this was
Or
a week
books
where,
to write.
yeah, or wanted to practice writing a novel, feel free to submit them over to us, and we would read it too. We would read it because we would have. We thought we'd have all this time to kill. But let's go ahead and we'll start with the community thoughts, and then we'll just see if there's anything that we didn't already touch on that might tie into that, and then we'll move on to some community questions. So, Sol, did you want to read those?
Yeah. So I think we mostly got one from a Dio game. He wrote a pretty big piece. I kind of grabbed the three important paragraphs. So if we're okay with just reading that, I'll read those three out. That's a yes. Okay.
No.
That's right.
What
So
are we
for
doing?
those of you in the chat are wondering, we asked the community for their thoughts on the campaign co-op delay because we kind of want to. At the end of the day, this is still run for the community, right? For you guys watching, commenting, chatting. So in general, if you have any questions or whatnot, every time before we come live, a day or so before, we post it on Twitter, on our forums, let us know. So back to it. So Dio Game says, from the point of view of myself, looking forward to the game, I'm not overly concerned. The only friends I tend to play with are either am I reading? Okay. Are either ambivalent to co-op or outright dislike campaign altogether. I'm the only one in the circle that prefers it to the traditional multiplayer. The console split screen was a far more pressing issue that 343 has corrected. As for Forge, while I do not personally partake in the creative aspects of Forge, I do enjoy the creativity of the community and many of the maps. And he goes on to say, Microsoft has launched several incomplete games in the past, and again, they are launching this one missing features. While a polished but incomplete product is preferable to a disastrously glitchy but ambitious one, Cyberpunk, the fact that it has come to this does not reflect well on 343 or Xbox, and I suspect this will be reflected in the reviews. I think Game of the Year is out of the picture now, though. I mean, we know now that obviously that's not. It has a 0% chance. It's not even nominated. Sorry. I think Game of the Year is out of the picture now, and if this game scores below an 80, there will be real problems in the image. And finally, he mentions, I sympathize that 343 has had to inherit a monster that is arguably of Bungie's making, but with the amount of resources, funding, and support studios thrown at the game comes an expectation. I can also appreciate that after a while, from Microsoft's point of view, you just got to get the game out and try and recover your investment. And this is the statistical best trade-off. But most importantly, I just look forward to the day when Halo is no longer the carrier of the Xbox brand.
I think that's actually a pretty good post to talk about because
and the rest is good too. I encourage you guys to, if you can find it on the forums, to read through the whole thing.
Yeah, come and join our Halo community in the XboxEra forums. But yeah, I think Dio brings up some good points, and there's some things I actually would even push back a little bit on, but not because I think they're bad points, because I think a lot of the things he brings up are things I've heard. I was actually talking to a friend today, and I won't say his name. He's in the gaming community, but we were kind of going back and forth
with Shill Benzer.
No, it wasn't. But we were talking about this, and talking about the image aspect and talking about the incomplete thing and what does that mean? And I said to him at that point in time that, I really think that this isn't about them necessarily trying to, obviously the investment is a factor, right? But it's not just about that because of how important Halo is to their brand. This is a game that is going to be more important probably than any release they've had, maybe since Halo 2, really, in terms of the importance to what they are trying to do, how how it reflects on the brand. The thing I would say though is that what's really going to have that impact, that image impact, is are people talking about this months later? Is this something that Twitch streamers, the popular ones, are going to be playing months later? That's what's really going to drive the conversation around Halo and the brand. And I want the game to review well as well. I think people want to see, not just because I don't care about what the narratives are. I think a lot of our community gets too worried about stuff like that, but just because I want it to be a game that deserves a high campaign score. And I think we are all hoping for that. And I'm still optimistic that's mostly going to happen. And if people are going to dock it because it doesn't have a co-op, that's their right. But I'm not necessarily worried about that. I'm just more worried about for the parts it is getting fairly scored on for the solo campaign experience, that it deserves to get good marks, right? And I think that's what we really should be focusing on, and just let Microsoft's a $2 trillion company. Let them handle the messaging. And I think they understand the calculations, the calculated risks versus delaying it versus launching it now when they have a window all to themselves in December. So I'll let you guys talk on that.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything to add?
I would say it's hard for people to get their minds around it, and they say like, why was the date on Jeff's show on Gamescom? And it's just a simple fact that show had like way more viewership. So much of the conversation and the longevity on games and everything is driven by streaming. Like a huge part that we don't get used to because we grew up on,
because we're old.
Yeah, we grew up on like gaming journalism being the main way that you got your content. And the harsh reality is it's like a percentage point of what the overall streaming audience every day is. It's crazy how much more you reach. If you can hit hard on Twitch, hit decently hard on YouTube, and hit hard on Facebook, oddly enough, Facebook gaming is pretty goddamn massive, mainly in all the other countries because Facebook is so big and evil. But with the mobile stuff, but with xCloud being mobile focused, they are going for that audience, and that ends up being so much more important for the lifespan of a live service game these days, is can you keep pushing social media engagement on streaming platforms and TikTok and all this other dumb Zoomer shit that most of us don't get, even though I do like, and in fact, I do stream.
To push back a little bit, I would say that we have to be careful about people thinking those are the only metrics that matter, because there are plenty of games. There are plenty of times when Sea of Thieves wasn't hitting. Somebody on the main podcast used to say, "Oh, nobody's watching Sea of Thieves." Meanwhile, they were reporting millions of players. So that's not necessarily, you can't use that as your singular metric. But I think that this idea of the narrative, so many people are concerned about the narratives or the images, and Fortnite has a 60 something on Metacritic.
Yeah. You even look at Sony,
it has a Metacritic score.
They make their own narrative just by and Xbox will never do it. They're way more talkative and stuff, but you can control your own narrative pretty well too if you just put your mind to it as one of these giant companies. Like you don't have to. You're not beholden to what everyone's saying. If you just keep putting out good shit and your messaging is good, you can drive the conversation pretty well. Especially with what Game Pass is going to be moving forward.
Well, I was gonna say Game Pass. It democratizes the entire platform of gaming. Like you don't. Even though, yes, I want people to read our reviews and all that kind of stuff. The day
read the reviews. Don't just read the score and then ignore the review.
If I read the review and like the one con is no co-op, I'm like, okay, nice.
What the day of reviews or these quote unquote narratives or people telling you to play a game, those days are kind of over when you consider free to play and Game Pass, because they democratize the ability for you to try a game out without having to worry about spending $60-$70 on that game to play it. So I think that I see where Dio's coming from, but on that end, like I don't think the narrative or the image for the vast majority of people who play games, they don't give a shit about that. And in terms of separating Halo from the being the tentpole franchise, I mean, Xbox is Halo. Halo is Xbox. Like, I mean, there's a reason that the game is still as popular as it is, and it's so entwined with Xbox's success and its health. So I don't see that ever. I mean, yes, we'll have Starfield, we'll have the Elder Scrolls, we'll have all these games and more that are becoming more important and becoming more of that Xbox identity. But I think to say that there's a day that you wish that Halo's not, it's like, I don't know, that kind of hurts a little bit, I guess.
Like, look at it this way. If 20 years from now, you could say there's 20 years of Elder Scrolls being an Xbox property, right? But then there's 40 years of Halo being an Xbox property.
I think there's a difference between, because it depends on what he means by saying that. Like, does he mean Xbox's or Microsoft's dependency on Halo, or does that just mean
he wants to reduce the expectations, the weight on 343?
Those will come.
I think that's going to happen naturally as you get more and more games. But then, just how, I guess the mind share in terms of Xbox's, if you look at all the Xbox's IPs in a pie, how much of the mind share does? Because when you think of Nintendo, you think of Mario. Even though they have plenty of other IPs.
I think of Kid Icarus.
Really?
Well,
no.
Like, obviously, I think Master Chief is already Xbox's Halo or Mario.
It is.
I think Halo's already.
If Mario had multiplayer Forge co-op.
No, and I'm not even talking about it. I'm just talking about mindshare to the platform.
We got a super chat.
I think it's always good. The one thing I would push back on Dio's thing is I don't know. I don't understand how this is Bungie's mess.
The expectations, because they did so well in getting so much out in their games. The full campaign, the full multiplayer, and Forge.
That Bungie's mess. Like, Bungie just did. Like, even we brought up Halo 2 a few times in this podcast, and yes, it had a third of the campaign cut, and yes, it had features cut like online co-op. But
I think he's saying Bungie was so good at doing it.
Yeah,
and that
that's
343. It's a mess for 343 to always have to match their bar.
Sitting on the shoulders of giants, right? So to speak,
because of the engine. But,
no.
But at this point, the third game on this is that's on 343.
Yeah,
that's what he's saying.
And like, I guess that's a good problem to have. Yeah. But like, despite, like, say Halo 2, we mentioned that, despite it having so much cut, it was still in a league of its own compared to other console first-person shooters at the time, which is why I think Bungie may get, the quote-unquote pass in terms of those things. So, like, if and I'm not saying 343 has to do the same thing, because the playing field has leveled out a lot since then. We didn't have the Infinity Wards. We didn't have a lot of there's a lot of good first-person shooters, whereas back then there really wasn't. Yeah. So it's I think I'm right there with you, Abe, that I hope it does well for 343's sake. Like, I want all of their effort to be well rewarded, well celebrated, and I'm less concerned about the narrative and just I guess the developers getting their time in the spotlight or the limelight or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and speaking of narratives, Daniel, you did mention something about Game Pass. By the way, so just so people don't take this out of context, because that happens in the gaming community sometimes. We're not saying because it's on Game Pass it doesn't have to be good. So just to clarify. In fact, I would argue the very opposite, that because of the importance of Game Pass to Microsoft, it puts more weight on Halo being good. So
my only point was that it removes the barriers that most people would have to overcome to be able to play a game.
Yeah, and it does change. It does change the value equation too, or what people might accept on day one, and that is just a reality. Like there
might be more barriers to lower the score. You know, people are less likely to try a game unless it scores high.
Yeah.
Whereas, even though hopefully it scores high.
We did have a super chat.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I'll read it.
Sorry for my rant.
No problem.
I can't read anything, so
sorry. Yeah. The super chat's from Widya Santoso, and they ask a fun question: with multiplayer being free to play, would you put Halo multiplayer on PlayStation and Switch?
I absolutely would. Yes. I don't understand why they haven't. I think they absolutely should go and do it. I don't care how much extra work it is. But yeah, we've gone over it before with Special Meek. It's one of those, they are a very analytics heavy company. They would do the return on investment and think about it like they did with Starfield. Like, is it worth it to get all this extra work to make all this work on these other platforms and then have to constantly support them along with what you have? Because what they have what they are attempting to do with that GDK is to kind of limit how much work it is to jump between PC and Xbox in the future. Now, obviously, the Xbox One always going to be a pain in the dick. That's why they can just pay another company to do it. But does it become worth the money to pay another company to have a PlayStation port that works and have another company that has a Switch port that works and is always up to date and crossplay is all working? Like it. So they could if it was worth it, I think.
So here's the easy answer, Jesse. Is yes, you can play Halo. If you are a PlayStation or Nintendo owner, you can take your PlayStation controller and you can plug it into a TV and you can stream it, and that's pretty much what So, and I think that's going to be the answer for everything that's not an Xbox
And if
console.
what Nick had teased actually happens later this year, and maybe you just play it on an Xbox app for streaming on a Switch.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if Nintendo and Sony allowed Game Pass on their platforms, you would see Halo on a PlayStation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
You could finally play Starfield.
And I'd be okay with that. I'd be fine with Halo.
Doesn't affect me.
Sure.
It's more people that can play. Crap. And they're on streaming, so I can kill them real easy.
They're using. Could you imagine, even Mike could be good with all those asymmetric sticks. Just kidding. All right, we should keep moving forward.
If Mike's on a nice wire connection on a super powerful PC and they're playing like a shitty Switch version, he could probably win half the time, maybe.
One thing I want to mention, was
come on.
4 points back to Jesse's point about the streaming. It's actually, I feel like it might be a bigger margin than we think, primarily because the competition now isn't Battlefield. It isn't. It's basically Warzone. It's Apex Legends. It's Fortnite, right? The more free-to-play games, and I guess Splitgate in a sense. So in that sense, I'm sure Microsoft wants their engagement to be high as possible when it comes to the multiplayer, because it needs it. If you're going free to play, that means you need a fairly decent amount of a revenue stream, which means you need a fairly large amount of players.
Depends on if they're like really pushing it where they want to, it's half monetize the game and half have the game be a hook into the Xbox ecosystem to get people to subscribe to Game Pass, because it's like, shit, I want a Series S now because, I think Halo, I think console, I'm not a PC player, I don't want a PC, so I got this Series S, I got Halo, it's free to play, they gave me a month of Game Pass for free, and there's a buck for another 3 months after that, and I get hooked to it, and I really like, shit, I've got 500 games right now that I could be playing, but if I don't just sign up for another $10, I'm going to lose those, and so they can just keep that. Like, that's really their ingress on almost everything, is we want to make money on it as much as we can, but our end goal is to get you to subscribe and stay subscribed. So it's it's that double hitter on everything.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be perks with the subscription to the multiplayer
yeah.
too. You know, yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Good points. So before we move on from Mord's thing, did anybody else want to say anything about that? Are we ready to move on to some other questions? If we're good there. The only other thing I think I will add real quick is I think how Halo is at the end of 2002 is actually going to be 2022 is going to be more important than this year. But we'll come back to that. What is so funny?
You
What did I
hit that
miss?
pulpit. You hit that pulpit, Abe.
Son of a bitch. Guys.
It's Dan's, John. Don't you know that? That is his job.
Oh.
Come
man.
on.
Let's move on. Let's
seeing
go.
how
Let's
little-
change it.
Okay,
Change
sorry.
this
Go on.
subject.
I don't. Yeah.
No, what's the next question we got?
You got the thread up, or you want me to go?
I actually did have the thread up, but I closed it.
You fool.
This is why I like copy pasting the questions, which I swear I thought I did for one of them. I did not. Okay, you grab the thread. I'll check Discord really quick. I believe there's something there.
So, from Podrick Payne, question for Blue Team. Oh, I'm Chief. Which group is being more unreasonable? The ones who want Infinite to release 2021 as is, despite co-op having to come later, maybe because it means less to them than others, or the ones who want to delay the whole game for everyone because they want it to launch with co-op in, because it means a lot to them. I say this because I don't think the latter group fully realizes what they're asking for, especially the people who are telling tales of playing with their dad or son or siblings and how much co-op means to them. They wax poetic about their past histories while simultaneously calling for the majority of people who want the game now to have to wait because of their very personal situation. To me, it's incredibly selfish. Almost like if I have to wait, everyone should. And Dan and I hit that point a lot where it's I 100% get being disappointed about it. But when you look at it and say the whole thing should be delayed no matter what until co-op is in because that's my Halo, and it's like if it was just the normal campaign and co-op was out despite it being pretty linear with wide open-ish areas, then I would get it. But with it being a brand new thing that's this big, huge like open world levels where they need time to figure it out and make sure it all syncs and all that type of stuff, like I can understand wanting to make sure that works right. And if the campaign, which was mainly focused on his solo, is done, like you don't have to delay it just for co-op. And I found some of the arguments, not all. Like I got everyone, I'm disappointed too, I want co-op. But I found some of the arguments felt entitled to a small degree.
Yeah.
A very large degree.
That's probably the gaming community.
Some,
if it
not
comes
all.
down, if it comes down exclusively just for co-op, then no. Like, and I say that as a huge co-op fan, no. But I'm generally a bit more understanding to that angle. If your argument is to the benefit of campaign as a whole, or the game as a whole, or the developer's lifestyle, what have you. But like co-op alone, no. Like I hate to say it, like I feel for any co-op fan or people that play co-op, but that alone, no.
I'm disappointed that I won't get to ride around with Mike's horrible shooting and driving day one.
Excellent.
Well,
My shooting is up for debate, but my driving, I will stand firm.
No, you're right. You just leave the vehicle and leave your teammates to die.
Oh man, yeah, and that's going to be the bar, right? Is the AI going to be able to drive to make up for Mike? And I think the answer is yes. But yeah, so we'll keep.
I think we have one last question that I'm seeing
We
here.
have one from Mort, and then I guess a tiny one from Halo Gaming 08, and then there's a little bit on the Discord.
That stupid ass Discord full of idiots. What do they want?
No, it's actually from Beast Gamer, so I guess I'll switch to that one next. Basically, he asked, what are your thoughts / opinions on how seasons might be structured and how the game would expand narratively, including both our multiplayer Spartans and potential yearly expansions?
I feel that big expansions with Chief will be like bi-yearly, like those will be the big meaty ones, and our multiplayer guys will be the more often like story
Bi-yearly,
progressing
you mean
stuff.
like once every other year?
Yeah, once every other year. So like
that's not.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before. Where who's to say that they don't have major campaign like updates or expansions every 3 years? Like we've talked about how there's if there's really a 10-year plan, you can fit 3 major campaigns in that 10 years. That would still fall in line with like a typical.
It would probably be the point where they
developer
drop support too for previous generation, right?
God, I hope.
I mean, that was the Rise of Iron
that
thing.
whole xCloud to console streaming is there for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't think that single player content will last long on the Xbox One generation.
Yeah, especially if it's causing a lot of issues now. I really think they have a lot of potential to take multiple directions with that and experiment. And that's, and this goes back to the the discussion we had last year, Mike. And I guess why I got excited, and I understand why some people get nervous, but I think there's opportunities to take risks, to try, to maybe take smaller content drops and try something different in there. And then you could have big tentpole things. By the way, as now I'm thinking about it, this really isn't something I've heard mentioned, but this isn't going to be the last time that you get to play a story-based Halo thing, probably even in the next year or two. That's going to be co-op day one. So there's going to be other campaign stuff released, and that's eventually, ideally, is going to have co-op by that.
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
So once they get that foundation right, but yeah, I think there's going to be a chance for them to go in all different types of directions. So
I did want to. I'm sorry, go on.
No. That was going to tell you, Mike.
Huh?
No, go ahead, Mike.
So like,
one of you go.
So okay, like I'm sure most of us are familiar with that Reddit post that got deleted. Let's just pretend there's some truth to that. Do you guys think that there's any possibility of whatever they intended to do with the campaign, had they had a delay or extra time? Do you think we're going to see that added late? Could you see that added later, like within the first year? Like, do you see the campaign evolving beyond what it is at launch? And I'm not talking about in the typical sense that we're given, co-op. I mean more
like actual level structural changes, or
like
new
more
weapons
substance.
And stuff.
Yeah.
To be honest, when I first read that Reddit post, the impression I got was more like, we want more time to like fine tune or to make this like the best game it can be. Not necessarily the impression that they're cutting content they want to add to the campaign. More like, we think the campaign could be even better if we had a couple more months. You know what I mean? That's the impression I got.
That could be taken in a few different ways, because it seemed like if Stanton really did, like what Daniel was talking about, the new engine, if that new engine, made them change around how the car felt and drove, like, do they get the fine tuning done within the first year?
That's what Turn 10 was helping them with, I think, was like the driving physics. So it should be good.
Oh, I don't literally mean the driving, you ass.
You brought it up, man. I'm just,
Well, Mike, you bring up some good points, and this is, I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what a campaign that is solo focused, living as a gas game is like, because I don't think we've had like we said, AAA's pretty much moved to games as a platform as their focus, but we haven't really seen that happen with a solo campaign yet. There's, again, I just say there's a lot of opportunity, and opportunity doesn't mean that, again, they're probably going to have to balance opportunity with public perception and things like that. But there's opportunities that you could even have on the PC right now. There's mods for Halo CE that make the gameplay very different, and they change weapons and things like that. So you could have all types of things just coming from that aspect of it. And we still don't know what Forge is. I'm excited to find out what that eventually is, and if that's going to have any sort of impact on how people maybe can even tweak that. Like, is there going to be they're gonna make it easier to mod that stuff. And then at the end of the day, like I said, there's stuff that's going to be deep in development. They're building assets, and if those assets don't make this campaign, there might be assets that get cut that they just don't fit structurally, that get repurposed somewhere else. So that's something that I expect to happen as it's moving on. But I don't know that there's going to be a one set way, and that's probably why they haven't set those expectations. I don't think they're ready to commit to anything at this point, and there's no reason to. They should be allowed to, take some chances and hopefully give us some interesting types of content drops that we would have received anywhere else. Okay.
Preach.
Any new questions?
We want to hit the Mort one.
Yeah, you can go ahead and read it if it's funny.
All right.
Alternate.
Old friend of the site and constant companion during my streams, Mort asks, been a while since I had a question for the best Halo podcast on XboxEra.
Aw.
But here
Aw.
goes. After playing Psychonauts 2 and seeing how incredibly polished that game is, it's one of the games where you don't have to wonder where the first patch is going to drop, and that's good. I couldn't help but think about the other upcoming first-party titles. I expect almost the same level of polish from Forza Horizon 5, even though the online components always mess things up a bit. But first impressions really do make a difference, and do you think the Halo single-player campaign will live up to this new Xbox standard, or is it coming in too hot? Seeing how Double Fine used its extra time and resources to polish their game, should we expect the same from 343, and how important do you think this is for Halo? Boy, I think we've hit this one a lot.
I don't know if it's accurate to go on.
I'm just saying, it could be either way. You can look at them delaying co-op and Forge as either good management to set a reasonable time frame for getting things out polished well, or you could see it as things are on fire and they're cutting things to try and, stop the plane from smashing into the ground. But we don't know. So my answer is I'm not sure. I trust Joseph Staten to come in and properly finish something, and if he needed more time, I think he would say, I need more time, and he's been there long enough, and they do it, and I've been told by people in the industry who do know that the reason I always said September is that was the original hope and target when they delayed, was we will delay until next September, and as it got closer and closer, they never said that because they were like, we don't want to force this. We don't want to have unhealthy working conditions. Work from home's been really bad. So, yeah, let's just leave it open a bit. We'll see as we get closer. And they were like, okay, we'll just take it until December. We're fine. We've spent so much money on Game Pass. We have big things hitting pretty much every month. Even September now doesn't have a tentpole title, but it already has 13 games coming on Game Pass that they've announced. Jeez. It's ridiculous. Like, Bruno keeps putting up lists and tweets, and it's like, yeah, there's actually been 13 things, including another one that they talked about yesterday, like outside of Gamescom. So I think it could go either way, but in the end, I'm leaning towards things are going to be better than they would have if they hadn't cut these things.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, this is all part of Phil and Matt's plan to make, the best quality first party, offering that they've just, like Mike said, since 2018 they've been talking about. And I think you look at the past couple releases this year especially, and that element of quality at launch is definitely coming to fruition. And I think I'm more likely to lean towards these cuts were made specifically to ensure that what else is there is quality. So that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, cuts aren't always
They're not always bad.
No, they're not. I mean, I even think about my favorite games of all time, the favorite games that played the last generation. I mean, there's always, can we start cutting the swamp levels in Dark Souls? I love the series, but you know what I'm saying?
Don't let me hear you say that.
Dark Root Basin, I just got through that the other day.
That was my favorite single player game of last gen. But yeah, so that doesn't really tell you a lot. When they cut things, generally good editing, a tighter. we've got. I feel like this is its own separate topic, but a lot of times there is a lot of focus on the length. I mean, obviously, you don't want a 3-hour campaign or something like that, but really, to me, it's the quality per hour, especially in a Halo game, because you're gonna. Halo fans, I feel generally, at least the hardcore fans, generally play these games over. They play them with friends. They turn up difficulties. They just play them because it's been a year, whatever. And so I really feel like that moment to moment, fun per amount of time you're playing is as important as anything. So I don't know. I don't read anything into cuts. Cuts are
they've probably done like thousands of them already. We just heard about these two, and they're delayed.
Yeah,
unless it's a Ridley Scott movie.
Every single game has cuts. That's
yeah.
And I think we all hope that it turns out as good as what everyone wants it to be. That's like the logical. I don't know if it's accurate to compare it to Psychonauts, because Psychonauts. They had a smaller budget, and then they got bought out, and then their budget, they got an influx of cash, whereas 343 probably would like to have more time still, or it would be beneficial. But then whether or not they're able to, again, however, we're going to find out when the game comes out. If the game is amazing at launch, then a lot of these concerns are not for nothing, especially if you're wanting co-op, but it should definitely calm a lot of concerns, I would say.
Yeah. It better, actually, I should say. If the game's solid, you better stop concern trolling. What the heck? Not saying everyone is, but I'm saying the ones that are.
I am.
Don't worry about the narratives. They're always there's unlimited goalposts. Just accept it and move on.
I mean, just look at Nick. He'll figure out something else to complain about.
Yeah, he was just let 343 make the best game they can make to where we saw last week.
Delay it a year. Oh, you gave him more than a year? Oh, it's gonna be garbage. It's what's
we better hope he doesn't watch this before our show.
I'm gonna preface the start of the first couple minutes.
Okay, speaking of something, I wanted to
do his impression.
I wanted to touch on real quick is, if 343 really wanted to, for whatever reason, split the multiplayer and the campaign, for whatever reason, let's say they wanted to, I don't care. I don't mind. Like, is that really that important of a thing?
Oh, I'd be okay with that.
For people that they have to release together?
I was the only one who was okay with it. Only me.
That's the point I'm trying to get at, actually, is
it's not, I think everyone would have been
it's not like this otherworldly concept. If it has to happen, it happens. Big whoop. You deal with it.
Honestly, this was kind of their last before they move into this new paradigm, which they're really already in. They're trying to. No, well, even Halo kind of moving to this platform thing. I mean, eventually after this, there's really never going to be anything that even feels like a traditional launch, and this just kind of semi was. I think they had this unique little 20-year anniversary date and the nostalgia, and I think at that time it made sense to just through everything you had to try to recreate that experience, and I think that dream's dead. So let's just move on to the next best thing. And at this point, it doesn't matter now. I don't really think it. At this point, it doesn't matter if you split the two, because I think people are now starting to accept the fact that they're starting to come to the realization that it's not your. I don't want to say your dad's Halo, because my dad didn't play Halo, but you know what I'm saying.
I think that what happened with Cyberpunk is still fresh enough in everyone's mind that if they did delay anything,
there he is.
he heard it.
Oh, no.
We should make Nick have to super chat to read anything he says. This is, can you idiots stop?
Wait.
Shit?
Can you idiots stop giving me shit?
No.
We were talking about how brilliant your Moon Studios idea was. Don't yell at us. Jeez.
I'm about to get kicked out of Discord after this.
There we all are locked out. All right. Do we have any more questions?
One thing I realized we never talked about, and it's actually the thumbnail of our video, is the console, the controller.
Yeah, I've got them loaded up to try and show them off in the video, but it might make. Let me close some stuff.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about the controller Dan's gonna get, and it's not good enough because he's so goddamn rich. Here. Hey, controller's playing. Oh,
Nice.
oh no, it's killing the video.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
not.
never mind.
Oh, it looks like it's playing fine here.
Yeah, but the audio was
I'm
dying
not
for me
salty
real
at all
hard.
that I couldn't. I
Oh.
don't have the money to get it, and I couldn't have the time to get it, or anything like that.
All
The
right, so-
ugly console controller, of course.
I get a picture.
That's why I was reminded of it, actually, now that I think about it. Nick's take on it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, okay, the console, this is anecdotal, obviously, but when the console trailer came out, I had 3 people who clearly had no interest in getting a Series X for a while. They have an Xbox One, but it's like a 1S or something. All 3 asked me, like, hey, how do I get this? Hey, what do I do? Can you get this for me? And I'm like, dude, it sold out 2 hours ago, man. Like, good luck. What are you doing, you know?
It goes back to what I said. The most important thing is how good is Halo being received? How well? I can't speak English anymore. How well is Halo being received when there's actually stock of Xboxes out there? And that's going to be probably the bigger question.
And
But
who'd have thought we'd still not at the point where the Series X is available, you know?
it's not going to be this winter, you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I mean, Series S, you can get
Yeah.
that at least.
Yeah, that's available, yeah. Also,
That was available yesterday.
all
yeah.
right.
Sorry,
Sorry,
I'm
guys.
just kind of tired. It's been a long podcast.
Everybody's got to
Mhm.
go to the rest.
Blanking.
Okay.
All right.
I think
So
we've
did,
done a
What
good
is
job.
with you in the restroom? I think Gabe needs to go.
no.
Right. Technically, there was one last line by Halo Gaming. It's very, very simply answered, which is why I'll just read it real quick. Halo Gaming, Andrew Schmidt asked in the forums, why do you think they didn't show the gameplay to the public that they showed behind the scenes? He's talking about the Gamescom gameplay that you had to show to be eligible for the awards. From what I've heard, it was just multiplayer, I think. Gameplay that was
it
shown.
can be up to 10 minutes of anything.
Yeah.
So we don't know what it was.
Is that a fact? Like, is that?
I
a real
think that's
thing?
one of the requirements to be eligible
Yeah,
for.
you can show up to 10 minutes of gameplay, and that's how you get nominated. That's why so many things weren't nominated. Because
That's why the best Sony game was like what? Like 2 games
Elden
or
Ring.
3?
Oh,
Those
Yeah.
awards are just so
Yeah, they're
pointless.
just-
I
I
don't
bet you-
understand that. I don't. I think
Keely
that was
asked,
the dumbest
but-
thing
Like
that
the company had to have been there as a partner to then submit their game, and not every
Best
company was there as a
Nintendo game-
partner,
a
so you don't get
Nintendo-
every game submitted.
Yeah. Best Nintendo game was either a Nintendo game or Just Dance.
Nintendo
Keely asked
was
each of the
Mario and
pub-
Rabbids or Just Dance,
Yeah.
and it was Mario and Rabbids because Ubi was there, so their Ubi games were shown. That's all.
Yeah, I think Keely asked Microsoft to submit their top 3 games, and they sent 3 pictures of Craig's face. That's all that was.
Well,
I don't even
Craig's
think they
here
submitted
now.
Forza over to them,
By the way.
because it wasn't even nominated. So it's
Yeah.
it's the silliest award of probably I've seen in a while. So I don't know. We don't know what they sent them. They probably didn't send them much.
All right, that all of them? We good?
I think so.
All right, here, just everyone. There you go.
Oh, Jesus.
Say goodbye, everybody.
Hey,
Oh wait, do our sign
I'm
out
kidding,
to
I'm
Mr.
kidding.
Mr. Ursel.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you've been watching us for the past, wow, what is this? 2.5 hours. By the way, this is by far our longest podcast, and it's dang. This was
Stop
a
making
good.
heroes now. I'm just kidding.
My back has been kind of. Anyways,
The youngest one here, man.
fair
Is
enough.
he? I
Talk
mean,
about
look
your
at this
age and
picture of him playing Halo. I don't think he's the youngest one here.
Fair enough. If you've been following us this entire time watching it, I'm sure you know who we are. If you haven't, we're XboxEra. We're a pretty I don't use the words grassroots. I actually don't even know what that means, to be honest. I just hear it all the time. We're like a community
Passion
a
project.
community startup. That's a bad word too. We're a group of fans.
We need to work on your elevator pitch, but keep
we
going.
We've got a
Our guerrilla
superstar in
tactics.
Special Nick. He looks a lot like Shia LaBeouf, so everyone's got the hots for him. John's really bald, but he's nice. So, like
That's his whole character.
he had a
somehow.
needler in a picture. He's famous for that.
Yes.
Oh,
Anyways, if you enjoy our content, if you enjoyed this episode, check it out. This is episode 26 of 26, meaning there's another 25 episodes that you can check out, of which some information repeats, but for the most part, I feel like our discussion is always kind of fun. If you like cats, definitely check them out, because we almost always have a couple on our shows.
Podcast.
Yeah. Check our channel out. We review games at a ridiculous rate. My
We're
way,
over
I mean
150 now.
Jesse. He's a machine, just constantly releasing videos, opinion pieces. We have our forums. We want a safer place, or like, not a safer place per se, but like a more calm place to discuss Xbox.
Dan and I ban the shitheads pretty quickly.
Exactly. I saw in the chat, someone mentioned that our forum handled the whole campaign co-op delay pretty well. And I mean, that was largely due to the effort.
I was in that thread for 10 hours, goddamn straight.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it turn to shit.
Moderating that day was, that made me angry.
But back to brighter things. We have our website, constantly releasing all the Xbox news and whatnot. And if you enjoy our content, please throw a little like. It really helps. Please spread the word. We always like having more viewers. And if you really enjoy our content, we do have a Patreon in the description link. Every little bit helps, of course. And in terms of timestamps and the audio one, that should be out in probably by tomorrow morning or so.
And if you like watching Halo, I stream the shit out of it on our
my bad.
Twitch
Sorry,
page with twitch.tv/the_XboxEra. We went over there because YouTube's real shitty about their metrics with live streams versus watch hours. So we're streaming over there. We are affiliated. If you get a Twitch Prime, give it to us. We're desperate, and thank you.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But when are you on, Jesse? You're on almost every morning.
10 a.m. every morning. Justin's going to start doing, probably not next week, because if they're doing that walkout on Twitch thing on Wednesday, we won't stream that
that's
day.
on Wednesday? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm on at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, EDT, as I had to explain in the forums, every day.
Oh, that's what EDT stands for.
Yep.
Huh.
Not everyone.
Okay.
You got S
I'm
for
learning a lot of
standard,
things
D
today,
for
man.
daylight.
We should all say goodbye before we all fall asleep.
No
Yeah.
kidding. My cats
All
are
right.
about to eat me alive.
Thank you for watching, all.
Yes, thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everybody. We will see you again very soon.
And sorry, I know we forgot to
Bye.
mention
Okay, let's
the
wave.
giant blog post that launched today. We'll probably try and cover that or the relevant parts of that in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
Belongs to
Bye.
you. Bye.